subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Stretched out like lightning and suddenly grabbed the middle of the vibranium spear. "Stop!" the indigenous youth growled, grabbing the fast-moving vibranium spear with his hand. The supersonic spear stopped abruptly, and the tip of the spear finally hung less than 3 centimeters away from Howard's chest, unable to move forward even half an inch. "You caught the spear I threw with all my strength from nearly 10 meters away with just one hand?" The female guard captain was shocked, with a storm in her heart. How could this be possible without a monster-level strength that is several times greater than hers? The female guard captain looked at the aboriginal youth who suddenly appeared, and a chill ran down her spine. "It's not nice to treat my friend like this." The native youth smiled, picked up the vibranium spear, briefly gathered strength in his wrist and arm, swung it in a circle, and threw it back in the original direction. "I'll give it back to you." The vibranium spear turned into a stream of silver light, and its speed was 2 or 3 times faster than before. The female guard captain screamed in horror when she saw this, just as desperate as Howard had been before. Bang! The vibranium spear was firmly inserted between the calves of the female guard captain, nailing her dress to the cliff wall behind her. More than half of the 2-meter-long spear was embedded in the hard rock wall. One can imagine how amazing the force was when it was thrown. The female guard captain's legs went weak, and she sat astride the vibranium spear, her whole body shaking. Witnessing this turning point the whole time, the royal families of various tribes on the cliff and the common people on the cliff all opened their mouths in horror, looking at the indigenous youth who became the focus of the stage as soon as he appeared. "Who are you?" Chaka was surprised and took a step back with the vibranium shield in hand. He had seen the extraordinary power of Black Panther inherited from his father, but compared to the brute force of the young man in front of him, it was probably slightly inferior. The aboriginal youth ignored him, turned around, looked at Howard unhappily, and asked, "Are you okay? Kyle, it's a good thing you arrived in time." Howard smiled bitterly, his teeth still chattering. Obviously, he was really frightened by the danger just now. "Kyle." When Chaka heard this name, it was like thunder in his ears, and he opened his eyes wide in disbelief. The female captain of the guard clamped her legs around the vibranium spear under her crotch, barely stood up, pointed at the indigenous youth and Howard, and said in a hurried tone of shame and anger, "2 foreign intruders have disrupted the succession ceremony to the throne. Guards attack." "Hooah!" As soon as she finished speaking, 6 female guards dressed in the same attire responded, holding vibranium spears in both hands, and quickly walked onto the stage, cautiously approaching the indigenous youth in a siege formation. "Kyle, I leave it all to you." Howard hid behind the indigenous youth. "Don't worry, I'm here," the indigenous young man replied confidently, looking calmly at the 6 female guards who were approaching him and preparing to launch an attack. "Go!" The female guard captain gave the order from the back. The 6 female guards were about to charge when a voice suddenly rang out from the side. "Stop! Wait a moment." Huh. The natives around were slightly stunned, and then saw Chaka holding up the vibranium shield to stop the offensive, and took steady steps forward with shining eyes. "Your Highness." The female guards and the indigenous royal family were puzzled. Chaka approached the indigenous youth and stopped about 5 meters away. Chaka took a deep breath, stared at the indigenous youth, and asked seriously, "Sir, you are definitely not a local here. Why did the gentleman with an American accent call you Kyle?" As expected of a prince, he still knows the big picture and the limits. The indigenous youth shrugged and said calmly, "Because my name is Kyle. Is there a problem?" Venom suit, disguise removed. His appearance changed. His black hair faded back to dazzling gold. His eyes glowed blue, and his clothes turned into a one-piece black knight suit, showing the flowing muscular outline of his perfect physique, which brought an extremely oppressive impact and aggression to the people who saw him. "It's really you." Chaka was extremely surprised and took a few steps forward excitedly. "You recognize me?" Kyle looked surprised. Facing the question, Chaka nodded quickly. "Of course. I have studied abroad and studied at a local university in the United States." "Your Highness." "Be careful of that man," the female guard captain warned loudly. "Don't worry. If he wanted to kill me, I would have died countless times by now." Chaka shook his head, his face showing excitement, and he pointed his hand slightly towards Kyle and said excitedly, as if he had met an idol, "Do you know who he is? Mr. Kyle, he is the war hero who ended the Second World War and was called the symbol of peace by the American people." A symbol of peace? The tribal royal family and indigenous residents were in an uproar and looked at Kyle in shock. Although they are independent and closed, it does not mean that they do not pay attention to collecting important information from the outside world. Symbol of peace. One man oppressed an entire country and ended the World War. He was a godlike superhero. As long as you are on Earth, it is hard not to know about this living legend. "Mr. Kyle, why did you come to my country?" Chaka asked excitedly. Kyle didn't think much about it. He raised his chin and gestured to Howard, who was standing behind him. "My friend, Howard, is the founder of Stark Industries and an explorer. He said that there might be vibranium minerals here, so he asked me to bring him here to look for it. Unfortunately, we found the city of the future, and he got lost inside and accidentally broke into the ceremony. So that's how it is." Chaka suddenly realized and did not question Kyle. As long as you have lived in America, especially in New York, the worship of Kyle has almost become a culture under the subtle influence of the environment. Everyone is Kaibu. The female captain of the guards heard that Chaka's tone was not right, and her face turned ugly. She reminded him coldly, "Your Highness, no matter if he is the symbol of peace or someone else, he is now an outsider who has sneaked into our country and disrupted the throne challenge ceremony. His crime is unforgivable, and we must not let him go." As soon as this was said, some indigenous residents responded, "Yes, the country's laws and regulations cannot be messed up." Chaka was in a dilemma. He looked at Kyle, then at the royal family and the people, and didn't know what to do. Chapter 141, Guardian Black Panther. As a prince who will soon inherit the throne of Wakanda, Chaka should be more inclined towards the royal family and indigenous people of his country. If the intruder at this moment was anyone else, Chaka would have issued an order to kill him on the spot without hesitation in accordance with national laws and regulations. But the other person happened to be the symbol of peace, Kyle, one of the most untouchable people on the planet. Not to mention his power and connections, just based on his personal combat power, he can stand at the top of this world era. In other words, as a dual symbol of war and peace, the existence of the man in front of us represents an era. Kill him. Never forgive outsiders. What are you waiting for, Prince? Amid the fierce calls for judgment from the surrounding tribal royal families, 6 female guards holding vibranium spears showed signs of preparing to launch a siege. Under the public's criticism, Kyle had a calm expression on his face as he stood on the edge of the platform with Howard. Behind them was a waterfall cliff with a drop of nearly 100 meters, surrounded by steam. "Wait a minute, let me think about how to end this matter." Chaka gritted his teeth and thought quickly. He thought to himself, "If I let Mr. Kyle go, it would violate the national regulations set by our ancestors. In the eyes of the royal families and people of the tribes, they would also think that I am a coward and look down on me. But if we do nothing and let the guards take action, the consequences will be." Chaka didn't dare to think any further. Although he was very confident in his country's technology and combat weapons, once his opponent was Kyle, all his confidence would disappear. "Prince Chaka, don't think too much. This is Wakanda. Even a dragon will come here. With so many of us going together, we will definitely be able to subdue him." The female captain of the guards walked onto the stage, holding a vibranium sword in her hand. It was obvious that she had forgotten the pain after her wound healed, and she faced Kyle with renewed courage. "You don't know enough about this man. He is really strong and fearless of all of us here." Chaka sighed, feeling torn and constantly weighing the options to find a perfect solution. But time was not waiting for him. Kyle protected Howard and faced off against 7 elite king guards. The atmosphere was tense, and an unstoppable fight could break out at any time. The mirror space cannot be entered yet. It is in cooling time. When a fight really breaks out, I will find a chance to open the portal to cover your departure." Kyle whispered to himself. Howard behind him nodded in agreement, knowing that with his weak strength, he would be nothing more than a burden if he stayed here. Be careful with your body, Howard said worriedly. Don't worry. If it's just me, I have at least 5 ways to escape. Kyle chuckled, not taking the country's elite female guard seriously. No matter how good the weapon is, even if it is a full body of vibranium equipment, if the physical fitness is only within the human numerical range, it will not pose any threat to him at all. I haven't exercised properly in 2 weeks. Kyle looked at the female guards and hooked his finger in a cold and provocative manner. Chaka's eyes twitched as he watched. This war hero was indeed as rumored to be, domineering in any situation. The female guards looked at each other, with flames of anger in their eyes. They could no longer hold back and rushed forward with vibranium spears in hand. Come on! Kyle smiled coldly, ready to fight them head-on. But he suddenly perceived something and quickly raised his eyes to look upwards. A dark-colored humanoid Black Panther nimbly leaped down from the top of the cliff, tumbled a few times in the air, and landed lightly in the center of the platform, stopping the female guards and splashing water. It stood up tall, with its black cloak fluttering in the wind. Its dark metal battle suit was like a layer of keratin membrane, clinging to its body surface. Its mask had the pattern of a leopard's face. Its helmet had 2 animal ears, and its claws on both hands were sharp, revealing a hint of cold light. Like the natural king, strong man, and guardian of this land, Black Panther stood in the middle of the stage, instantly shocking everyone on the field. Your Majesty, the 7 female guards reacted quickly and knelt on one knee. The royal families of various tribes, and even the indigenous residents outside the cliff, all knelt down in respect and worship. The scene was quite spectacular for a moment. Father, Chaka felt relieved and addressed the man in the Black Panther suit affectionately. Step down. You haven't ascended the throne yet, and this matter is not something you can handle now. The contemporary Black Panther king said with vicissitudes and dignity. Yes. Chaka nodded and retreated to the stone steps inside the platform to stand with the people of his mother's royal family. You guys step back too. Black Panther issued an order to the female guards kneeling in front of him. The female guards obeyed and hurriedly put away their vibranium spears and retreated from the inner area of the stage. Soon, only the Black Panther King and 2 outsiders, Kyle and Howard, were left on the stage. 2 outsiders. The Black Panther King turned around, glanced at Howard coldly, and then looked Kyle up and down with a dignified look. The King of Wakanda. Kyle was neither humble nor arrogant. He looked directly at the King of Black Panther, both of them exuding the majesty and aura of a king. If the Black Panther King is the recognized king here, then he is the flat-headed brother who will fight if he doesn't obey. No matter you are a king or a god, the big fist is the law. You and I, one-on-one, just like the throne challenge ceremony. Only one side can be considered victorious if it surrenders or dies. The Black Panther King raised his black leopard claws. You win. On behalf of Wakanda, I forgive the crimes of both of you and treat you as honored guests. No problem, let's get started. Kyle agreed readily. I haven't told you yet what consequences you will face if you lose, Black Panther King reminded. No need. I still haven't found the English spelling of failure in my life dictionary. Kyle smiled. Is he proud? He has the capital to be proud. Howard, step aside first, Kyle ordered in a deep voice. Howard hurriedly walked to the cave at the edge of the platform, causing the representative of the Jabari royal family to glare at him fiercely. My father, who has inherited the power of Black Panther and served as the guardian of the country throughout his life, will fight against the invincible god-level heroes from the outside world. Chaka was uneasy, but his blood was boiling. He held his breath and stared at the 2 people standing face to face on the stage. The king is wearing a one-piece Black Panther suit, while Kyle is wearing a one-piece Venom suit. Although both suits are dark in color and each is filled with barbarism and murderous aura, there are huge essential differences between them. One is the most advanced technological product of the era on Earth at this stage. The other is a biological symbiont originating from outer space with its own thinking and learning abilities. This is the real cross-century war in every sense. Chapter 142 Kyle versus Black Panther. Your Majesty, we will win. Show me your kingly side, and let the foreign invaders see the true strength of the Guardian of Wakanda. Hooray and cheer for our king, Black Panther, the tribal royal family on the cliff, and even the indigenous people outside the cliff were all shouting with excitement, and countless pairs of loyal and trusting eyes were focused on Black Panther. For them, Black Panther possesses the power of the Guardian that has been passed down for thousands of years. He is the most supreme being in Wakanda and also the strongest person in this advanced and wild land. There is no reason for the Black Panther King to lose to a war hero from the outside world. Almost all the natives of Wakanda believe this with certainty and firmness. Kyle, show your true strength and let these natives see the top combat power outside this closed country. Howard stood at the entrance of the cave, his palms sweating. He seemed very panicked, but he was actually calm and steady in his heart. How could the local natives understand that he was an undefeated symbol of peace, a legend with glorious achievements, and that he had no reason to lose no matter where he was? On the landing platform with a waterfall cliff as the background, Black Panther prepared for battle, raised his hands gently, and the vibranium-forged nails stretched out coldly. He was covered in dark vibranium, like a humanoid Black Panther, with the aura of a king, wild, aloof, and majestic. Black Panther's small move caused countless natives around him to cheer. Venom, full coverage mode, claw form. Kyle whispered. The Venom suit adhered to the surface of the tall body. The black liquid quickly flowed and transformed, more like the original tough keratin membrane of a living creature, covering the whole body, and condensed into a dark hood on the neck to cover the face and hair. Dark claws extended from the ends of Kyle's fists. His narrow eyes glowed scarlet, and with a bloody grin on his face, he seemed to have turned into a demon monster from the dark hell. Cruelty, tyranny, savagery, and killing. These words seemed to have been originally created to describe this. His fully covered body, which was born purely for combat and tempered through countless file-sized battles, was transformed in the sunlight. The moment it was completed, the indigenous people who had originally called for Black Panther were speechless. They could only gasp and look at the powerful and aggressive humanoid monster that landed on the stage in fear. Can we start? Kyle smiled and looked at Black Panther with a cold and domineering gaze. Of course. Black Panther nodded slightly. The next moment, the two bodies moved at the same time, and a burst of white water splashed where they were standing. Two black figures, at an astonishing speed several times faster than that of humans, blurred into afterimages in the visual field, and suddenly collided with each other accompanied by strong winds and splashes of water. Bang, with the two of them as the center. The accumulated water beneath their feet exploded outwards under the powerful impact, creating ripples. What a terrifying power. Black Panther was secretly surprised. He blocked Kyle's claws with his hands, steadied his feet, kept his composure, and faced the enemy head-on without taking a single step back. If he hadn't been wearing the protective vibranium battle suit and had lost most of his power, he would have been blown away by Kyle in the first encounter, and it would not have been as evenly matched as it seemed now. Kyle frowned. The vibranium property's effect on melee physical attacks was too severely weakened. Come again. Kyle did not give up physical attacks at all, and insisted on using swift boxing and sharp claws to stab Black Panther's vibranium suit. It was difficult to break through the surface defense, but the tons of punch power still forced Black Panther back a step. Come on! Black Panther was not willing to be outdone. His voice was full of vicissitudes of life, and he marched forward instead of retreating, throwing himself into the battle with a youthful fighting spirit. After the collision of their Superman physiques and special battle suits, Kyle and Black Panther once again entangled in a game of fighting, with the splashing of water droplets, a back-and-forth battle of strength and skills. With Superman's strength, speed, and physical fitness, as well as the comprehensive defense of each other's suits and the addition and cancellation of each other's different suits, the close combat between the two continued for more than 5 minutes without stopping. The indigenous people watching opened their eyes wide in disbelief. They had never expected that this outsider could have a fighting power no less than Black Panther. You know, Black Panther is the most powerful king who rules and protects this land. King? Humph. You probably don't know what a legendary hero is. In the field of combat, Kyle is a god. Howard smiled happily. He knew that this seemingly stalemate battle could basically be declared over. After all, the man he knew well loved to hide his cards. In the fierce and exciting battle on the stage, the vibranium claws tore at the vibranium arm guard that Kyle blocked, leaving 5 slight white marks and making a sharp and piercing strange sound. Whip form, Kyle recited silently in his mind, and the sharp claws on his left hand quickly transformed into a black whip. The whip was swung at supersonic speed and hit a black shadow that was moving at an extremely fast speed. Black Panther fell into the water without moving and stood up quickly while panting. His majestic and cold eyes pierced through the vibranium beast mask and fell directly on Kyle. Don't you understand? As long as I wear this one-piece full-body battle suit made of vibranium, there is no chance of me being defeated. Black Panther said in a deep and confident voice. Okay, I have to admit one fact. That is, you're more durable than Steve. Kyle shrugged and glanced at the chest. There were some traces of the venomous coat being torn by the vibranium claws, and a few drops of blood were spilled from the inner skin. Although the self-healing ability is apparently lost, Venom also has a super self-healing ability that can quickly repair the damage to the transformed battlesuit. After 5 minutes, he was slightly injured, but Black Panther's vibranium suit showed no signs of damage. Job? Black Panther shook his head in disapproval. Haven't you noticed yet? I only used 3 fighting skills to fight you just now. Kyle stated a fact coldly. 3? What did you say? Black Panther frowned, having an uneasy feeling in his heart. Isn't it normal to have 3 fighting techniques? Kyle did not answer, but smiled mysteriously and said, the vibranium suit is inherently invincible, right? I really hope that you, Old King, can withstand the next attack. As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped on the ground and rushed towards Black Panther with great force. Black Panther's body tensed, and he just raised his arm to launch a claw attack, but Kyle seemed to have predicted his action in advance and raised his right hand easily, using the vibranium arm guard to block the vibranium claw. An illusion? Black Panther was shocked, but then Kyle's performance shocked him so much that he was completely speechless. Even before he could launch any effective fighting moves that he thought he was proficient in, his opponent would see through them and neutralize them with simple movement techniques. Once or twice, it would be fine if it was just luck, but every time it happened, the old king of Black Panther was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. Chapter 143 above the king. Hey, your majesty, what's going on? You ask me. Who should I ask? No way could our king lose. The indigenous people who were watching the battle had terrified looks on their faces, and even kept their comments to a minimum, nervously watching the battle turn into a one-sided crushing victory in an instant. From a third-party perspective, Black Panther was eager to regain his ground in the battle, but every time he launched a swift and powerful attack, Kyle easily saw through it and responded in advance, easily eliminating his combat attacks. How could this happen? Under the beast-shaped vibranium mask, the old king's weathered face was full of surprise and confusion. Although he himself is an old warrior, Kyle, who is several decades younger than him, has far superior fighting skills and combat experience. Yes, fighting skills are the biggest difference between the two. This gap will only be clearly reflected when the physical strength, equipment, and combat uniforms of each other are not much different, and their fighting style is mainly close combat. Your punch isn't sharp enough. Raise your step a little higher, Kyle whispered, as if he was facing a child card player in the family, verbally instructing and training him while parrying and dealing with the sharp attacks of Black Panther. Damn it, the old king gritted his teeth. As the powerful Black Panther for decades, this was the first time he had suffered such humiliation in battle. The hardness of vibranium metal ranks first among all metals on Earth. It is naturally invulnerable to swords and guns when used to make full-body combat suits, but it does not significantly increase the offensive ability. Vibranium nail claws are the only semi-auxiliary weapons, and the offensive relies entirely on the primitive fighting skills honed from fighting wild beasts and invaders. The primitive fighting skills that have been passed down for thousands of years are unparalleled in the country, but in Kyle's opinion, these skills are too crude and simple. Seeing that you can't attack me, it's my turn to attack now. Kyle smiled, clenched his fists tightly, and began to display anti-combat game skills with the strength and speed of Superman. Black Panther's expression changed, and he switched from attack to defense. In a few quick encounters, he was defeated repeatedly by Kyle's full-scale fighting moves. Kyle sneered. The vibranium suit was indeed unable to break through defense at this stage, but the king within him had lost his main combat ability and could only defend himself. He was no longer the predator Black Panther, but a turtle that could only take a beating. He was relentless, and with his superb skills, he easily suppressed Black Panther, not giving him any room to breathe, and slowly pushed him to the edge of the cliff with a drop of 100 meters. The battle turned into a one-sided crushing and beating, like an adult teasing a child, which silenced the citizens who were watching the whole process from the sidelines. Awesome! Kyle's eyes sparkled. The more he fought, the smoother he became. His blood boiled. His body became like a furnace during the fight, the raging fire burning and increasing his energy. On the outside, he was cold and ruthless, constantly chasing after Black Panther, who was trying to jump up and down. Each of his punches had an impact force of over tons, and the water splashed wherever the fist hit it. The old king of Black Panther has a lot of grievances, just like a small boat in a stormy sea, completely becoming a moving sandbag that is chased and beaten to the edge of the cliff. "Are you still not admitting defeat?" Kyle asked coldly, hitting Black Panther so hard that he rolled over and soared, nearly knocking it off the cliff. The Black Panther king got on all fours, digging his nails into the rock, and amid the exclamations of his people, he stopped at the edge of the waterfall cliff, with one foot dangling in the air. "I'm Black Panther. How could I bow my head?" The Black Panther king roared, using his last bit of strength to jump high and pounced towards Kyle without hesitation. "Father!" Chala yelled, and the royal family and citizens of the tribe also shouted, "Your Majesty," anxiously, trying to persuade him to stop. Kyle's face was indifferent. He quickly kicked up his right foot and hit Black Panther's lower abdomen, sending him flying backwards like a ball. Just as Black Panther was about to be knocked off the cliff, a hand wearing a vibranium arm guard grabbed his little foot and pulled it back. "You!" Black Panther opened his eyes with difficulty. He was hanging outside the cliff with his body upside down. It was Kyle who held his calf with one hand and lifted his whole body up. He was wondering why the other party saved him. Then, Black Panther heard Kyle muttering, "Is it okay for a vibranium suit to fall off a cliff? Such a good punching bag can end so quickly." Black Panther rolled his eyes and was so depressed and angry that he almost vomited blood. "Go back!" Kyle swung the Black Panther in his hand back onto the landing platform as if he was throwing a spear. Black Panther's body rolled all the way, pushing the waves forward until it hit the cliff wall and finally stopped. "Father!" "King!" Prince Chala and the female guards who were a few meters away shouted and were about to surround Black Panther and approach him. But before they could move, Black Panther trembled and raised his hand to stop them. "The battle is not over yet. The rules of our ancestors cannot be violated," Black Panther said stubbornly, propping himself up against the wall. Kyle leaped down in front of him, his feet splashing down, stirring up countless water splashes. "Do you still want to fight?" Kyle stared coldly at the nearby Black Panther. His tall and fully covered body was like an invincible black Mephisto, blocking the golden sunlight behind him. The cold shadow completely enveloped the trembling Black Panther. "Can you tell me how many fighting techniques you have mastered?" Black Panther asked slowly. He had no actual internal injuries, but his physical and mental exhaustion had already reached the limits of his aging body. 141 types. Kyle said this despairing number calmly. "No wonder." Black Panther shook his head awkwardly, then clenched his fists tightly. "Keep going. The fight between us is not over yet. As the guardian here, Black Panther, I have to fulfill my duty to defeat the outsiders." "Then, as you wish." Kyle smiled faintly and punched forward like lightning. Bang! Black Panther's body was completely smashed against the wall behind him. Before he could struggle or resist, Kyle's punch followed and continued to hit his chest armor. The powerful impact force was transmitted, and even vibranium could not completely remove it, cracking the cliff behind Black Panther. Punch after punch, Kyle's red eyes flickered, and under the violent attack, Black Panther's body was driven into the cliff wall bit by bit, so that the entire waterfall cliff was faintly shaking. This extremely violent and cruel scene caused countless people to tremble, and some even knelt on the ground, begging in horror, "Stop! Please stop it! Your Majesty, please admit defeat quickly. Please stop fighting." For a moment, the sky above the waterfall cliff was filled with the voices of countless indigenous people's requests. When Chala saw the indigenous peoples bowing their heads, he shuddered all over and suddenly understood why his father wanted to fight Kyle alone. "Enough, please stop!" Chala jumped onto the stage with tears in his eyes, raised his hands and said in a deep voice, "I, Prince Chala, on behalf of Wakanda, formally surrender." His right fist suddenly stopped. Kyle, who looked like a humanoid monster, raised his eyes and calmly stopped the attack. In front of him, Black Panther's entire body was completely stuck in the hard cliff wall. With him as the center, the smooth and hard wall was covered with spider-like cracks. Chapter 144. Cooperation with Wakanda. Deep in the wild mountains and forests of Wakanda, there is a city of the future created by technology. In the very center of this immortal city stands a royal palace that combines ancient and cross-century technological features. The floor, which is mixed with vibranium metal, is paved as smooth as a mirror. The majestic palace building is magnificent and sparkles with dazzling golden light in the sun. This is where the Black Panther King resides, and it is also an important place for the royal family to discuss national affairs. For thousands of years, the independently developed nation of Wakanda has resisted and excluded outsiders, including foreign tribes, smugglers, and adventurers, and has done its best to hide the fact that it possesses advanced technology. Today, 2 outsiders were finally recognized by the whole country of Wakanda and were allowed to enter the sacred place of the royal palace as honored guests. With countless indigenous residents standing outside and watching, the Black Panther King led the way, followed by Kyle and Howard, as they walked along the wide avenue leading to the palace. Indigenous female guards holding vibranium spears lined up on both sides of the avenue, isolating the indigenous residents outside. "Kyle, you're amazing. Look, now they are not as barbaric and rampant as before," Howard whispered. Kyle smiled knowingly and said, "No matter what the laws and regulations are, the bigger the fist, the more powerful it is. Only extraordinary strength can override these things. Otherwise, there would be no exceptions, and the indigenous people would have judged and punished them in the same way as they did to outsiders." The residents nearby were still talking, and the way they looked at Kyle was no longer the contempt and disgust they had always shown towards outsiders, but a fear mixed with a hint of respect from the bottom of their hearts. Only the strong can gain the respect of others. This is even more evident in the natives of Wakanda. Otherwise, there would be no throne challenge ceremony. Kyle defeated the Black Panther King in a duel. In the previous battle, he showed his extraordinary strength. Even if some natives were dissatisfied, they had to admit that the other party was powerful. The indigenous people here are all primitive and barbaric. Only Prince Chaka seems to be living in a civilized era, Howard said, looking around at the royal family members and whispered in surprise, "The royal family members are still here. Why is the prince gone?" Kyle said inexplicably, "Most likely he will inherit the power of Black Panther." "Black Panther power?" Howard was confused. "It is a kind of heart-shaped grass that only the king of this place can possess. After taking it, you will go through a ritual of dreaming of your ancestors and gain the physique of a super soldier, which is equivalent to that of a Superman." Kyle said calmly, looking at the Black Panther King in front of him with a thoughtful expression on his face. "The old king of Black Panther is not as ignorant and conservative as he appears to be. A duel with him, perhaps for Prince Chaka and the country." The female guardian stopped outside the palace gate, and King Black Panther took Kyle and Howard all the way into the Grand Palace meeting hall. "I have something to discuss with 2 outsiders. Please ask the royal families of each tribe to move to the side hall and wait for a moment." The Black Panther King turned around and gave the order majestically. The royal family members looked at each other, but nodded in obedience and retreated to the side hall of the palace. The Black Panther King walked into the palace hall first, sat on the throne reserved for the king, waved and said, "Come in and sit down, two guests who have come from afar." Kyle didn't bother to be polite with him and sat down casually on a chair in the hall, and Howard sat next to him. Laugh. Black Panther on the throne stretched out his nails and claws, took off his beast-shaped Black Panther helmet, revealing a weathered and dark square face. His hair had turned white with age, and his face was full of fatigue. It was obvious that he had not recovered from the fierce battle just now. Kyle Dove, a U.S. war hero, the youngest retired general, a legendary hero known as the symbol of peace by the outside world. Howard Stark, a native of New York, was the head of scientific strategy during the war, the founder of Stark Industries, and a top scientist. The old king smiled and spoke lightly, briefly describing the identities of Kyle and Howard, and asked solemnly, "You two are both outstanding figures in the outside world. Why did you come to this remote and independent country?" Before Kyle could answer, Howard said sincerely, "Your Majesty, you should know the appeal of advanced technology to a scientist. Forgive me for being rash and disrupting your son's throne challenge ceremony." Howard paused and asked, "But your country is so advanced and developed. Why don't you open it to the outside world? Why do you hate and reject outsiders so much?" The outside world only knows Wakanda as an independent, barbaric, undeveloped agricultural country. It's not that we don't want to open up to the outside world. It's because since ancient times, Wakanda has been constantly invaded by outsiders because of its vibranium resources and advanced technology. Their desperate and crazy behavior for vibranium has disturbed us who live here. The old king shook his head and said helplessly, "We have no intention of using vibranium or advanced technology to invade and occupy other countries' territories, but some outsiders with great ambitions are trying to destroy this country and plunder its resources." Kyle nodded in agreement. Even he was a little jealous of the resources that Wakanda possessed. That's an almost inexhaustible supply of vibranium. Gems, gold, coal, oil, and other resources pale in comparison. If he was not about to leave the Earth, I am afraid that according to the original plan, after the Carl family's power developed in the next 10 years, they would also launch a development plan to occupy and rule Wakanda. As for now, Wakanda is the second superpower that Kyle has taken a fancy to besides the ancient One Wizard organization. Because these forces, like the Carl family, have escaped from the mundane well of the earth and can see the sea and stars outside the well. "King," Kyle smiled and said frankly, "I came here to discuss cooperation with Wakanda." "Cooperation?" The king was stunned for a moment, then refused in a deep voice. "Wakanda will always remain an independent country and will not have too much contact with the outside world, let alone cooperation matters." "Is that really the case?" Kyle smiled. "If you didn't pay attention to the outside world, how would you know our information and send Prince Chaka to study in the United States?" The king fell silent, and Kyle continued, "If I'm not mistaken, King, you keep collecting and studying information from the outside world because you are waiting for an opportunity that will allow Wakanda to stand fearlessly on the world stage. Wakanda may show its existence to the outside world in the future, but not now," the king said with a deep gaze. Kyle spread his hands calmly. "That's why I said cooperation. The premise of cooperation is to conceal customer information from each other. The result of cooperation is to explore scientific truth and improve each other's productivity." Chapter 145, Black Panther Teacher, It's a Very Simple Truth. Kyle had no interest in whether Wakanda wanted to make its country public. What he wanted to talk to the king was about the cooperation in the field of science and technology between the Carl family and Wakanda. The old king was a smart man, so he quickly understood what Kyle meant. After a moment of silence, he said, "So, this is a technological cooperation without exposing Wakanda's information to the outside world?" "That's right." Kyle nodded, and Howard looked at the king expectantly. "This is an opportunity for the door of technology. With the support of Wakanda's advanced technology, he believes that many high-tech products that are still in the theoretical stage can be released earlier, saving decades of time. Then what do you think you can rely on to cooperate with Wakanda?" The king said slowly with a serious face, "I don't mean to look down on you. The new mobile phones and computer products released by Stark Industries are all cross-century genius works. Stark Industries can stand as a top technology company in the outside world, but this alone is not enough to qualify for cooperation with Wakanda's Ministry of Science and Technology. Kyle and Howard looked at each other, and both couldn't help but smile. Your Majesty, Stark Industries is naturally not as scientific as Wakanda today, but we have the technological treasures of the future new era, but we just don't have the ability to develop and manufacture them. Howard responded with a smile on his face. Despite having seen how technologically advanced Wakanda is, he is still confident in his own scientific accomplishments and the new cutting-edge black technology he has mastered with Kyle's help. "Can you tell me briefly?" asked the king. "Well," Howard hesitated, not knowing how to tell the story. "King, why don't you let Howard take you to find out for yourself?" Kyle said to ease his embarrassment. Personally, before the king understood what was said, Kyle stood up from his seat, put the ring on his left finger, and turned his right hand in a circle. Bright sparks formed a wheel in front of him. In about 5 seconds, a portal was formed and fixed in the main hall of the palace. Through the brilliant circular hole, the scene of the scientific research laboratory on the other side could be seen. Kyle smiled faintly. "This is a portal to New York, USA. King, if you trust us, then go through this door with Howard to see the technology we have mastered." Incredible. Directly crossing the space. Is this one of the technologies you have mastered? The king stood up from the throne in shock and approached the portal to look around. "This is not science, this is magic," Howard corrected, leading the way through the portal. "King, we have science and technology that you Wakanda have never mastered. Enter this portal, and I will take you to the research laboratory of Stark Industries to learn more." The king readily agreed, not worrying that this was a trap or a lie, and followed Howard through the portal and left the main hall of the palace. Kyle used his magic power to maintain the portal, sat back in his seat in the main hall, crossed his legs, and waited patiently. Mutual understanding is an important prerequisite for long-term cooperation. Kyle believes that the new elements that can replace unlimited energy and the semi-artificial intelligence that already has all the intelligence foundations, these two technological products are enough to change the world and can completely convince the king of Wakanda. 10 minutes later, before the king and Howard returned, a female guard called out, "Your Highness," outside the main hall. Then the tightly closed door of the main hall of the palace opened, and Prince Chaka walked in, dressed in a black formal suit. Kyle looked up from his seat. Chaka had only changed into one set of clothes, but his aura was strong. His eyes were sharp and majestic, and even when he raised his hands, he had the temperament and demeanor of a king. He now had a dark blue card on him, the same as the king's. Black Panther heritage, the power inherited from the Black Panther lineage. Rare blue ability card. The royal family of Wakanda, after inheriting the position of king, was given the name of Guardian Black Panther. Black Panther consumes a heart-shaped herb that greatly enhances his senses and physical properties, giving him Superman speed, acuity, strength, and endurance. Can be used with another potion to remove Black Panther's powers. Current status: unable to extract. Is this the effect of heart-shaped grass? Kyle was amazed. The Black Panther inheritance gave him a physique that was no worse than that of the super soldier when he was first injected with the drug. The only drawback is that this is not a complete mutation. It is just borrowing the inherited power of Black Panther through the heart-shaped grass. It is no longer possible to rely on acquired training to break through. Natural aging and lifespan are still the same as ordinary people. "Mr. Kyle, why are you the only one here? Where are my father and your friends?" Chaka walked into the hall and saw that only Kyle was there. He was stunned for more than a second. There in New York, Kyle pointed to the portal in the middle of the main hall and briefly explained the situation. "So that's how it is." Chaka breathed a sigh of relief, moved closer to Kyle, and sat in the seat next to him. Kyle looked at him in surprise. "You're not afraid of me? And you believe my words so easily?" "Of course, you are a legendary hero who is the symbol of peace." Chaka nodded as a matter of course, with a smile on his face. "Besides, now even my father believes in you, which proves that my judgment is correct." "Your father is a good king," Kyle commented softly. "Yes, of course he is a good king and a good father." Chaka said this with a wry smile. "I know. My father, despite his old age, proposed to fight you, so that the people would realize your strength and no longer rigidly follow the law to resolutely fight against you. He said bitterly, "He sacrificed his invincible glory today to pave the final steps for me to inherit the throne, and at the same time planted a seed in the hearts of the people of Wakanda, a seed that yearns for the outside world and no longer resists outsiders." Chaka, you are very wise and intelligent. Under your leadership, Wakanda may one day open its doors to the world and reveal everything about its country. Kyle said with a smile, "I also hope that day will come soon." Chaka took a deep breath, full of confidence. At this moment, Howard and the king returned to the main hall through the portal. "Father." Chaka quickly stood up and stepped forward. The king held his hand and said to Kyle, "Since Chaka is here, I will first agree on behalf of Wakanda to start preliminary cooperation with Stark Industries in the field of science and technology. Tomorrow, when Chaka officially becomes king, he will arrange our cooperation." "Very good." Kyle nodded. Although he had expected this, he was still relieved after hearing the king's words. "But I have a condition. I hope you can agree to it." The king said in a deep voice. "What conditions?" "You tell me first." Kyle asked thoughtfully. "I hope you can be my teacher and teach Chaka fighting skills in due time." The old king said seriously. Chapter 146, Under God in the End. Kyle agreed to half of the Black Panther King's terms. That is to say, he would teach T'Chaka fighting skills from time to time, but only for 1 to 2 months. 2 months later, Logan, who is proficient in hundreds of fighting techniques, will serve as his fighting instructor. The king and Chaka asked the reason in surprise, and Kyle did not hide too much. He told them directly that his super soldier's body was corroded by nuclear radiation, causing his genes to slowly mutate in his body. Upon hearing this news, the king and Chaka expressed their willingness on the spot to use Wakanda's advanced medical technology to examine and treat Kyle's body. Kyle originally wanted to refuse, but he couldn't resist Howard's persuasion and underwent a third genetic diagnosis in Wakanda's underground biomedical department. Wakanda's medical staff mastered advanced technology across the centuries, and their medical level has also reached the level of the 21st century ahead of schedule. However, after a detailed examination of Kyle, they were still shocked by his physical condition. Nuclear radiation is not a natural product, but represents the most powerful, indiscriminate weapon of destruction possessed by human beings on Earth in modern times and in the future. As for gene mutation, it is still difficult for humans to give it a simple definition. The mutation of genetic DNA creates infinite possibilities for life. The upper limit may allow humans to become advanced creatures like gods. The lower limit may cause humans to regress to lower creatures like apes. What's more, the genetic mutation in Kyle's body is as uncontrollable as the Big Bang. Under the massive nuclear radiation, the genes are irreversibly transformed and reorganized. If it weren't for the self-healing factor to maintain the suppression, it would have caused his perfect body, which is 10 times that of a human, to collapse abruptly. It's incredible. It's as if you have the energy of a small sun hidden inside your body. While it will give you super abilities in the future, your body will be unable to withstand it and will self-destruct and die. There is nothing we can do about it. Medicine still has a long way to go to stabilize the human genetic structure. Wakanda's medical staff helplessly gave a diagnosis of incurable and specified the deadline for Kyle's body to die: 213 days. That's about 7 months, almost the same time as Howard's second diagnosis. Howard's face was filled with sorrow, his lips tightly closed, and he was too upset to speak for this bad news. Even the joy of having just reached a preliminary cooperation with Wakanda in the field of science and technology was completely wiped out. Above the king, below the god, Howard said to himself with regret. Kyle is only 24 years old this year. At this age, when young people are full of vigor and vitality, he is already a retired hero who ended the World War, a symbol of peace for future generations, and a legendary figure who is admired and supported by everyone. Unfortunately, as if he could not escape the curse of war, the nuclear radiation from the last battle urged and led him to his end. No matter how strong you are still just a human, not a god, and you can't transcend some things. The king and Chaka were extremely saddened to hear the unfortunate news, and lamented that God was jealous of talented people. "Don't worry, you guys live longer. Maybe we'll meet again in some future era." Kyle smiled. He was very optimistic and calm about this. After all, he never expected that Wakanda in the current era would have the medical technology to treat him. Eventually, we still have to embark on that unknown and distant road to the starry sky, since he had already made the decision and realized it. Although Kyle's physical symptoms became worse, it was as if a fire was ignited in his heart, and his fighting spirit and belief became stronger and stronger. "I have overcome all the difficulties in the battles. There is no reason why I would lose to myself in the end." For 2 consecutive days, Kyle and Howard stayed in Wakanda to witness and participate in the coronation ceremony of King T'Chaka. On the day T'Chaka became king, he immediately announced that the National Research Department would start preliminary cooperation with Stark Industries, the Carl family, in the field of science and technology. As the head of Stark Industries, Howard signed a cooperation agreement with King T'Chaka, and this historic moment was witnessed by Kyle and the Old King. This is the first time that Wakanda has broken the closed country of thousands of years and actively tried to maintain a good cooperative relationship with the outside world. It also lays a good foundation for the country to open up to the world and integrate with the outside world in the future. During this period, Kyle taught T'Chaka fighting skills in a timely manner and then hurriedly returned to the United States with Howard. The cooperation with Wakanda in the field of science and technology inevitably increased the things that the two of them had to do. Based on the design of the new element, Howard began to use the vibranium processing materials provided by Wakanda to try to manufacture acceleration and solidification energy equipment. Kyle returned to the family estate and continued to cultivate card players with the Super Agent ability card while processing and making a fixed portal dedicated to the Mage organization. Using a fixed portal to connect the family base on the overseas Dragon Turtle Island, the Stark Industrial Building in New York, and the Wakanda Kingdom in Africa, 3 distant places, is an important part of the Carl family's long-term development plan. On weekdays, Kyle would also formulate and improve the rules and regulations of the Carl family. Apart from this, as if to avoid family members noticing his physical abnormality, he basically never left the second floor of the manor. The Carl family is back on the right track, and the number of family members who become Card disciples is increasing. Logan, Yutong, and others are so focused on their daily work as instructors and supervisors that they don't even notice anything unusual about the head of the family, Kyle. 10 days passed in such a peaceful life. The lobby on the first floor of the main building of the Carl family manor was silent. There were only 2 young maids cleaning the place. They were busy cleaning up the dust in every corner meticulously. In the main hall, there is a new door with a pure metal frame and a round door handle. Mysterious light and shadow are reflected inside the door, and one can vaguely see the basement of Stark Industries on the other side. Tap tap as the footsteps slowly approached. The maid looked up and saw a beautiful woman dressed as an urban professional, stepping on high heels and crossing the fixed portal. She wore a suit jacket on top and a long skirt with leggings underneath. Her blonde hair was tied up high. Her every move was capable yet elegant. "Hello, Madam Lucy." The 2 maids greeted her sweetly and hurried forward. "I've told you so many times, don't call me madam." Lucy's fair face turned slightly red. She supported her slender waist with both hands and glared at the maid fiercely. "Yes, Sister Lucy." The maid quickly changed her words with a smile. To them, Lucy was the easiest person to get along with and be close to among those with high status in the family. "Why is it so quiet today? Where are the others?" Lucy was surprised and looked around with her beautiful eyes. Usually, the card players sparring could not be quiet. Wolf King, Red Eye, and Black Widow took the card players to Afghanistan, saying they wanted to get some practical training out there. The maid replied, "What about the head of the family?" Lucy asked expectantly. These days, she has been working as a financial manager at the Stark Industrial Building, studying diligently to take over the future funds of the Carl family. All of this, of course, is for someone. Chapter 147 Confession. The Master is in the Master Meeting Room on the 2nd floor. He has not left the manor in the past few days. The maid replied respectfully. Lucy couldn't help but smile brightly when she heard this, and pouted her lips in a girlish way and said, "That warmonger didn't go out with Logan and the others." But this way, it would be great. We can share our world together." She was about to go upstairs impatiently. But suddenly, she seemed to remember something. So she turned around to show off her figure and outfit and asked the maid, "Is what I'm wearing okay today?" The two maids nodded quickly, and after a few words of praise, as if they knew what Lucy cared about, they added, "The master will definitely like it when he sees it." "That's good." Lucy patted her already well-developed chest with her slender hand and breathed a sigh of relief with a little trepidation. Her already perfect and delicate face, now with light makeup and a professional suit, looks less girlish and more intellectual and mature. "Then I'll go to the second floor and bring up some wine and snacks later," Lucy ordered, and before the maid could respond, she hurried upstairs, lifting her skirt. On the second floor of the manor, the owner's meeting room, Lucy knocked on the wooden door, and a calm and magnetic male voice came from inside. "Come in." Lucy quickly opened the wooden door and walked into the room. Her beautiful eyes followed the light into the huge room, and her gaze fixed on a blond young man in casual clothes. He stood with his back to the door at the edge of the retro window. His tall and sturdy figure blocked out most of the light from the window, leaving a tall and cold back to anyone who came in. "Kyle," Lucy whispered lovingly, trotting forward, wrapping her arms around the young man's sturdy waist, with her chest completely pressed against his broad back. "Lucy, you're back," Kyle whispered, grabbing the girl's hand and holding it in his palm. "If I don't go back here, where else can I go back to?" Lucy laughed, stuck out her pink tongue mischievously, and complained in a low voice, "If you hadn't insisted that I manage the Carl family's finances, I wouldn't have to go to New York to study economic management courses." "How's your study going?" Kyle asked with rare interest. "Compared to the medical courses I studied before, it is not very difficult to learn. Moreover, during my work at the Stark Industrial Building, many colleagues took care of me and taught me professional knowledge," Lucy said softly. "There are still a lot of good people." Kyle chuckled and shrugged. It would be strange if he didn't care about her. Although Howard had retired to the background as a full-time scientific researcher, he was still the boss of the industry. Lucy was recommended by Howard to work temporarily in Stark Industries. Vibranium is as strong as a relationship. Stark Industries can be separated and operated independently. Now the Carl family's other businesses have not yet been expanded, and the financial income and expenditure are not much, so it is still easy to manage. Lucy was full of confidence. "That's good. I'll feel relieved from now on." Kyle narrowed his eyes, looked at the beautiful scenery out the window, and suddenly paused without saying anything else. "What are you worried about?" Lucy looked up puzzled and asked. "Nothing." Kyle seemed to want to avoid the topic, but the more he tried to cover it up, the more Lucy keenly sensed that something was wrong. "It's not nothing, you just acted a little abnormal today." Kyle, your hand." Lucy was extremely surprised, and she held Kyle's big hand tightly with her slender hand. Only then did I realize that his hands were a little cold, far from the fireplace-like warmth they used to have. "Kyle, you're hiding this from me. What on earth happened?" At Lucy's anxious questioning, Kyle sighed slightly, took a deep breath in preparation, turned around, and faced Lucy. "Your hair." Lucy's beautiful eyes widened, and her whole body trembled at the incredible scene. She reached out to touch Kyle's temples, where his golden hair had turned silver white. Yes, the originally dazzling golden hair, which seemed to be brightened by the sun, naturally turned silver white at the temples, as if the vitality of youth had faded away. "Lucy, come to the sofa, and I'll tell you everything," Kyle said calmly. When he woke up in the morning and found that his hair had turned silver, he knew that he could no longer hide it from the members of the Carl family, especially Lucy. Although the camouflage effect of the venom can still be used to cover up the past, the physical condition is getting worse and worse, and there is no need to do so now. It's time to tell Carl's family about his genetic mutation and his plan to leave the Earth soon. Kyle wiped the tears from Lucy's eyes, hugged the girl's trembling body, and held her on the long sofa in the conference room. This matter starts from Risen Tokyo. Kyle no longer concealed anything and told Lucy everything about his genetic mutation and his corresponding future plans. Gene mutations directly endanger life. I have about 6 months left. However, I don't have much time left to stay on Earth. I estimate that in a month, I will leave Earth and head for space. After Kyle finished speaking, Lucy in his arms was already crying, tears falling like pearls, wetting her clothes. "Why did you hide such an important thing from us?" Lucy sobbed angrily, her chest heaving rapidly. "Because I don't want you to know that the seemingly omnipotent head of the family has become a terminally ill genetic patient," Kyle said with a smile. Some time ago, once his critical health condition was made public, it was estimated that the Carl family would not be able to get back on track so quickly. Paying too much attention to gains and losses is a habit that Kyle cannot change. Lucy wiped the tears from her face, stared at Kyle with red eyes, and asked urgently, "If you leave the Earth and go to the universe, are you sure you can find a way to heal yourself?" "It's hard to say. The universe is too big and there are too many dangers. This road may lead to a life-or-death situation," Kyle said with a wry smile, clenched his fists, and said with determination in his eyes, "I am very afraid of death, so I will fight to the last moment and will never die so easily." She burst into laughter, thought for a moment, and asked again, "If you are alive and have recovered, how long will it take for you to come back?" "I don't know. Maybe 10 years, 50 years, or even 100 years," Kyle said. Seeing Lucy's eyes dimming, he added, "But no matter what, as long as I'm still alive, I will definitely come back." "I believe you," Lucy nodded, her face more serious than ever before, looking at Kyle solemnly. "After you leave, I will wait for you to come back here. Whether it's 50 years or 100 years, I will wait until I die," the girl said with great determination. Chapter 148, Family Base. After several years of World War II, the long dark dawn with roars of gunfire broke. From the year 1945 on the Earth's calendar, mankind licked its wounds from the war and continued to move forward. They yearned for peace, and their economic system is gradually recovering and sprouting like grass and trees bathed in spring rain. Everyone seemed to want to erase the pain left by the war, so they buried the pain deep in their memories and began to yearn for a new life, striving hard to pursue beautiful things that bring happiness. Sculptures of the symbol of peace can be found in central squares, war memorials, and even in prominent corners of streets and alleys in cities across the United States. But the term superhero is becoming increasingly muted and weak and is no longer mentioned in people's daily lives. Times create heroes. The era of war heroes ended with the end of the war, and the first batch of heroes officially stepped down from the stage of history. Perhaps some people often tell their children the inspirational story of a dwarf becoming Captain America, or the legendary deeds of the brightest star of humanity in World War II, but most of what remains are just remembrance and emotion. Initially, nearly tens of millions of people expressed regret over Kyle's retirement from the military and wrote an emotional petition to keep him. But as the months passed, the voices of such civil organizations became fewer and fewer. In 1945, this is the first day of a brand new year. Time magazine, the New York Times, Washington Post, and more than a dozen other well-known media outlets jointly featured Kyle in his night suit on their covers, publishing stories about say goodbye to war and yearn for peace. Among them, there was an article title that was straightforward and sparked heated discussions among the public. "Disputes and enemies are gone, and the new era no longer needs superheroes." Without war, what is the value of Superman? Do humans really need a god who is above everyone else? Major General Kyle's return and his disappearance from the public, I may have been the most normal and correct choice. I am not insulting heroes. The symbol of peace should be a cultural symbol, a statue, living in everyone's heart, rather than standing in front of us and forcing us to bow our heads. Shut up. We admire him. Isn't it normal to bow our heads? He is a legend with brilliant achievements and supreme honors, comparable to gods. We have a peaceful era now because of his fighting. No matter how people argue, it is difficult to hide the fact that, Kyle, it undoubtedly represents an era. Today, that era of blood and fire has finally become history in textbooks as people have voluntarily forgotten it, and is ushering in an icy end. Kyle had been in the Carl family's manor, finishing up family affairs before leaving, and had not noticed the discussions of people outside. Even if he knew, he would probably just smile faintly and not take it to heart. After all, from the beginning till now, He has been living for himself, including fighting and killing. As for superheroes, whoever wants to be one can be one. After Kyle confessed everything to Lucy, he felt relieved, as if a heavy stone had been weighing on his heart. In addition, Lucy expressed her willingness to wait for him, and the two expressed their feelings to each other, and their feelings for each other were sublimated again. This also made Kyle's belief more firm, and his desire to leave the Earth and step into the starry sky became stronger. That day, Howard called and brought Kyle another very important news. The base fortress of Dragon Turtle Island was completed. A top construction engineering company was recruited, and 10 large transport ships were used to carry tools and construction materials. With hundreds of employees working day and night, it took a month to finally build a base fortress on the Dragon Turtle Island in the Atlantic Ocean. By the time Kyle learned the news, the construction company had already completed the work, and all the engineering team members had evacuated from Longueuil Island. With anticipation, Kyle and Lucy picked up Howard, and the three of them went to the base island through the portal. The ancient giant dragon turtle had been sleeping in the heart of the Atlantic Ocean since Kyle summoned it. It had never woken up or moved again, so much so that over the course of a month, while the construction team was building on its back, no one had discovered its terrifying true appearance. On the primitive island on the back of the dragon turtle, an ultramodern 3-story building in Western style stands on the peak. Its disc-shaped shape is very technological, and its silver metallic luster is reflected in the sun. A circular portal with sparks flying all over it remained suspended outside the fortress gate. Lucy took Kyle's arm, and the two of them walked out of the portal. Kyle looked up at the fortress in front of him, which was no less distinctive than the Wakanda Palace. He pondered and said, "Howard, how is its defensive ability? If you knew what I later mixed in with the outer material of the fortress, you wouldn't be asking this question." Howard, dressed in a suit, walked out of the portal and chuckled. Could it be vibranium? Kyle curled his lips. That's right, Howard said with a smile. After reaching a preliminary cooperation with Wakan, King Chaka said that he could sell me the original vibranium metal, so I added a layer of vibranium to the exterior wall of this building that is about to be completed. The vibranium outer wall can withstand even intensive missile bombardment. Thank you so much for your help, Kyle said with emotion. Now, there are only 2 fixed portals that have been hastily manufactured. One is from the manor to the basement of Stark Industries, and the other is from Stark Industries to Wakanda. While Howard was researching in the field of science and technology, he also took great pains to purchase vibranium or in Wakanda and airlifted it to Dragon Turtle Island to rush and complete the construction of the fortress. This shows his dedication. Why are you arguing with me? This fortress building will also be my shelter in the future. Howard smiled and walked towards the closed metal door of the fortress building. Don't worry, there will be more surprising things to show you later. Howard walked to the door, took a deep breath, and said to the door, "Jarvis, open the door." Voice recognition has been activated, detection successful, entry allowed. Accompanied by the mechanical words of men. A camera protruded from the top wall and pointed at Howard in front of the door for secondary identification. The metal door then opened quickly. "Welcome back, Mr. Howard." Kyle saw this, blinked, and said, "You also moved your supercomputer here?" As if recognizing Kyle's words, the loudspeaker at the door spoke again. "Welcome back, Master Kyle." How funny. Lucy covered her mouth and laughed. Jarvis. "Welcome back, Mrs. Lucy." This intelligent system, Lucy bit her lip lightly, her face blushing and buried in her chest. "It seems that Jarvis' performance has become more humane and intelligent," Kyle commented. "This is just the integration of the voice system with the supercomputer. It is still an intelligent program that operates according to the instructions I input in advance. It is not yet able to actively think and judge like a human being. It is still far from true artificial intelligence." Howard sighed slightly and continued. "However, now that we use it to manage the base fortress, it can fully serve as an intelligent butler." Chapter 149: Scientific and Technological Truth Inside the Base Fortress. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows made of special materials, one can look down at the entire island below and the scenery of the sea outside. The fortress's overall security system is controlled by Jarvis's smart butler 24 hours a day. There are multiple Skynet probes installed on the island, which work with external satellites. as long as there is an external invasion. An early warning will be issued before entering the island. Of course, with the full camouflage projection equipment provided by Wakanda, this island can be completely disguised as a deserted island with an active volcanic eruption, a huge iceberg floating on the sea, a formed black tornado, etc. With the dragon turtle that can move in the sea originally, the existence of this island has been hidden since its completion, which is equivalent to being wiped out from the world. Howard said confidently as he stepped into the fortress, leading Kyle and Lucy in front. Inside the fortress, the floor is smooth and clean. The daytime lights above the head are turned on one by one, and the projection screen flickers in the hall with blurry light and shadow. Walking in the spacious metal corridor, Kyle felt like he was walking in a spaceship in a movie. The interior style was full of advanced technology, from which it can be seen that it was undoubtedly designed by Howard, the technology fanatic. There are a total of 50 independent rooms on the first floor of the fortress building. They are all equipped according to the highest standards of the hotel and can be provided to ordinary family members. They can only obtain the right to use the room after entering their personal information with Jarvis. There are 5 core member rooms and 3 VIP rooms on the second floor. There is a control room that stores supercomputers and a round-table conference room for family meetings. The top floor is the only master bedroom, and currently you are the only one who has access. Howard paused here and looked at Lucy next to Kyle. Then let's upgrade Lucy's authority level, Kyle said calmly, while Lucy blushed and was speechless. Each floor of the fortress building, including the rooms, requires a sufficient level of authority to enter. The top 3 floors are daily living areas. There's nothing special about them. I'll take you down there to have a look. Howard smiled mysteriously and led the two to the elevator on the first floor. The elevator is located in the very center of the fortress building. It is cylindrical and appears to be made of pure glass. It is transparent enough to see the outside, with only some inconspicuous metal frames and steel cables. Jarvis slowed down the elevator so we could take a closer look at the underground buildings of the fortress. Howard gave instructions, and the semi-artificial intelligence butler system not only identified the user's authority, but also analyzed the content of his instructions with a set of system programs. Roger that, sir. The elevator closed, started with a slight tremor, and slowly descended downwards with the 3 people inside. This is... Kyle's eyes widened. What came into view was a hollow darkness. The bottom of the 3-story fortress was actually hollow. No, it should be said that the island mountain where the fortress is located has been hollowed out, and a basement far more spacious than the upper level has been built downwards. The elevator was in the middle of the dark void, moving slowly downwards. All the lights in the first basement suddenly lit up, like a bright halo surrounding the elevator. The first floor of the basement is a training room that can accommodate hundreds of people for training at the same time. It has a physical exercise room, a gun room, a fighting room. Before Howard finished speaking, Kyle asked excitedly, "Is there a gravity room?" The gravity room is a great place for Superman-like physical training. Of course, there is no shortage of the gravity room you requested. Howard shrugged, stroked his mustache proudly, and said, "After my improvements, that gravity room can accommodate up to 10 people for training, and can reach up to 12 times the gravity." 12 times. Kyle was extremely surprised. This was a gravity multiple that even he could not adapt to. Not to mention those card players who had just obtained the super agent ability. Even Logan, Natasha Romanoff, and others had to walk on their stomachs when they came in. Howard nodded and said, "In fact, it can be increased to 15 times, but 12 times is already large enough. For ordinary people, 3 times is already at the limit of trainable adaptation. 15 times? Dead man." Lucy patted her chest in fear. Kyle nodded. 15 times is already a life-forbidden zone for ordinary people. The terrifying pressure and gravity will crush a person to the ground. Even if he does not die immediately, the blood circulation in the body will be blocked, and even the brain will be deprived of blood and oxygen when standing. The elevator continued to go down, arriving at and passing through the second underground floor. "This must be the Science Strategy Research Lab," Kyle said with a smile. Through the transparent elevator, he could vaguely see a lot of scientific research equipment in the several lit rooms. "That's right. The second underground floor is a research laboratory in the forefront of science. It is currently my dedicated office area. After the cooperation with Wakanda, new elemental energy, artificial intelligence, etc., will be manufactured and improved here. Howard's words also tied his future to the family territory on this island. He knew that although the Dragon Turtle Island was originally located in the distant open sea, after the installation of a fixed portal, it would become very convenient to enter and exit Stark Industries and Wakanda. Safe, secluded, well-equipped, and convenient for going out, this is exactly the research location that Howard has always dreamed of. Here, I can explore scientific truths with peace of mind. Howard rubbed his palms together, suppressing his inner excitement. He wished he could go in right now and continue the unfinished accelerated experiment on new elements. Kyle was his guide, constantly opening doors of truth in the field of science for him. Wakanda's abundant advanced scientific resources, Kyle's future technology products and theories, the stable and comfortable research site on the Dragon Turtle Island, and the infinite equation that prolongs his lifespan. Howard was also surprised to find that he had officially embarked on an unknown scientific path that surpassed countless scientists before him. Under such favorable conditions and environment, even a pig, given enough time, can peek into the door of scientific truth. Not to mention Howard, a genius engineer who believes his qualifications are no worse than any top scientist in history. Kyle, if you go into space, it will be the worst possible outcome. You will never come back. I will work hard to explore the scientific truth and try to save you with the power of science and technology. Howard looked at Kyle solemnly, his tone serious and firm. After witnessing the metaphysical magic that transcends space, Howard did not abandon science, but became even more obsessed and fanatical. He didn't believe that the technological power that had reached the end of the universe could not transcend space or even reverse time and space. Okay, man, it's settled. Kyle hugged Lucy, who looked sad, with one hand, patted Howard's shoulder, and said sincerely, "The Carl family is now in your hands. The road paved for the Carl family has basically been paved. It's time to put aside all worries and embark on the path he should take." Chapter 153 Days, another month passed. The Carl family, including the Carl disciples and above, all secretly moved to the base fortress on the Dragon Turtle Island through the portal. The original old manor was reserved as a base for the family to secretly train new people, and it was also an indirect way to look after the Winter Soldier who was frozen and sleeping in the basement of the manor. During this period of time, Kyle once again endowed 10 card disciples with the Super Agent card and used special materials to create a third fixed portal to connect the island base, Stark Industries, and Wakanda, 3 places far apart from each other. At the same time, his genetic mutation could no longer be concealed from other members of the Carl family. After all, although his physical condition had not shown too many abnormalities, his brilliant golden hair had completely turned into a silver-white color, a sign of illness. In about 6 months, Kyle will face the physique of a super soldier. The irreversible nuclear radiation in his body will force his genes to mutate, and his body will collapse and disintegrate, leading to functional death. Logan Yutong and Natasha Romanoff were all shocked and unable to believe the serious news. It took them a long time to gradually accept this subversive fact. Kyle, they followed the master of the house, to whom they pledged allegiance. He is recognized as the strongest man in the world. He has always fought on the battlefield as a super soldier. From being a rookie to retiring as a major general, he has a 100% winning rate in file-size battles. With his own strength, he turned the tide of the war, killed the Hydra organization, and forced the Samurai Kingdom to surrender. This legendary figure standing at the top of the pyramids, a symbol of peace, known as a god-level hero. Now that World War II has ended and everyone is yearning for peace and pursuing happiness, his body still has a terminal illness from the war. It's like becoming an elderly person. As the end of the world approaches, the genes in the body mutate faster and faster, and the physical condition becomes unstable and even loses superpowers for a short period of time every day. After Lucy personally told them the news, Logan and Yutong immediately went to Kyle to verify it, and they said in unison that they were willing to leave the Earth with him and go to the starry universe. In this regard, Kyle uniformly refused. To him, the universe and the starry sky are full of unknowns and dangers, and there is not much difference between traveling alone or with 3 people. Moreover, Logan and Yutong are the high-end combat forces of the Carl family. If they leave the Earth together, the Carl family will be in a real mess. Don't worry, take good care of the house. I will definitely come back alive, Kyle promised him seriously. Although Logan and Yutong were helpless, they were unable to persuade Kyle, who had already made the decision. Thus, in the island base, as the family members were collectively depressed, time passed day by day, and there were only 3 days left in the final countdown before Kyle was scheduled to leave the Earth. During these last 3 days, Kyle put aside all family affairs, entered the gravity room to warm up, practiced more than 100 fighting skills, and sorted out the weapons and equipment and background cards he was wearing. The item cards stored in the card space, such as gold, gems, cannons, guns, collectibles, etc., are all placed in the base inventory and managed by Lucy, the family's chief financial officer. Kyle only kept emergency food, laser pistols, planes, tanks, and other items that might come in handy for himself. What is about to be embarked on is an extremely adventurous journey. Either you will transform and return, or turn into a small pile of debris in the corner of the vast starry sky and be buried in a foreign land outside the Earth. This time, even Kyle was unsure. In Marvel Earth, you can also enjoy the advantages of a time traveler and know all kinds of known and unknown dangers in the main historical line. But once you leave Earth, your intelligence will be completely zero, and you can only rely on yourself to explore everything. Dragon Turtle Base, Gravity Room on the second underground floor. Under the bright spotlight, Kyle was standing upside down, doing push-ups with one hand. His silver hair was wet with sweat, which flowed down his hair and formed a puddle on the smooth floor. His chest was rising and falling as he breathed rapidly. He was wearing only a pair of sweatpants. His perfect physique with golden proportions was straight, and his muscular abdominal muscles were as solid as if they were made of steel. 10 times the peak physique of a super soldier, the self-healing factor. These are all present in me, and are abilities that are deeply embedded in my blood and bones, and even engraved in my genes. Even if I suppress the genetic mutation, you can't just take away what belongs to me. Kyle is determined and keeps his body and mind full of fighting spirit, unwilling to be reduced to an ordinary person by having his abilities devoured by the mutant genes. Ding! As the mechanical door of the gravity room opened, Natasha Romanoff appeared in a black tight leather jacket. After seeing Kyle inside, she hurried in as if she had something to report. "Master, there is news from the New York manor that Nick Fury has." Natasha Romanoff hadn't finished her words, yet when she entered the gravity field of the gravity room, she screamed and fell flat on the ground, with her chest flattened under her zippered leather jacket. "Is this gravity at the highest level? 12 times?" Natasha Romanoff's face flushed red, and she used both hands to prop up her body. She looked at Kyle, who was still doing one-handed push-ups in front of her, her beautiful eyes filled with shock. How could Superman's monster-level physique look like he was about to decay and die? "Has Fury reached the manor?" Kyle asked, exerting force on his wrist and flipping his body half a circle in the air nimbly, then standing steadily back on the ground. "Yes, I'm ready too. I can work for S.H.I.E.L.D. anytime," Natasha Romanoff said with difficulty, taking a deep breath. With her extraordinary super agent physique, her body movements were sluggish and slow under the pull of 12 times gravity. Kyle nodded and said to the speaker in the room that could receive voice commands, "Jarvis, turn off gravity and switch to cleaning mode." "Okay, Master," Jarvis' voice sounded, and according to the program system settings, the gravity field in the room was quickly turned off. Natasha Romanoff had just breathed a sigh of relief and stood up easily from the floor of the room, but the clear water from above her head drenched her again. It turned out that several shower heads were turned on the ceiling of the gravity room, and heavy rain suddenly formed in the room. After 10 seconds, the watering in the gravity chamber stopped, and dry hot air blew from the 4 walls. Kyle took a quick shower to clean the stains, and drew out the Venom card to summon the symbiote, who transformed into a set of hooded casual clothes. Wearing the ring on his left finger, Kyle cast a spell to open the portal leading to the meeting room on the second floor of the manor, and urged, "Let's go. I've arranged a bright way out for you. Everything in the future depends on your own luck." "Yes," Natasha Romanoff responded quickly, twisting her still wet hair with her hands, and hurriedly followed Kyle's steps into the suspended, rotating, bright portal. Chapter 151: Digging a Hole in the Suburbs of New York, at the former site of the Carl family estate, the second-floor conference room. "Hello, Master." Seeing the gorgeous portal suddenly appear in the room, the two well-trained maids walked forward quickly, with respect and joy on their faces, and stood on both sides of the portal with their heads down to greet and wait for instructions. As if hearing a sound, the bald black man who had been sitting on the conference sofa waiting for a long time stood up, covering his blind left eye with a black eye patch, leaving only his right eye to look over sharply. "Go get that bottle of wine Howard is stored here." After coming out of the portal, Kyle ordered the servants to go down. When he looked up and saw his familiar old friend, a sunny and gentle smile rarely appeared on his handsome face. "Fury, I haven't seen you for a few months." "Yeah." Fury shook his head with emotion, and the serious expression he usually wore as the director was relaxed. He smiled bitterly. "It's all thanks to you. The position of S.H.I.E.L.D. director is not easy. It's hard, tiring, and troublesome." Fury walked up to Kyle, patted his shoulders with both hands, and said sadly and frustratedly, "Kyle, Howard has already told me about your health on the phone. I'm sorry. You have all the resources I have, and you also have resources I don't have. Now this S.H.I.E.L.D. position is still given by you. I really don't know how I can help you. It's not your fault. No one on this earth can help me, let alone you." Kyle shrugged and said, "Only I can save myself." "Are we about to set off?" Fury asked, his already dark face becoming even darker. Kyle did not hide anything from him and answered directly, "Including today, there are still 3 days. On the third night, I will try to use some means to leave the Earth." "3 days? Like this?" Fury seemed to be worried and didn't continue. "Let's not talk about this anymore. I brought someone with me." Kyle gestured and turned sideways. The red-haired and seductive Natasha Romanoff followed behind him and walked out of the portal, leaving wet footprints on the floor. "I know Natasha Romanoff, an elite agent in the Soviet Red Room." Fury walked towards Natasha Romanoff with a self-proclaimed friendly smile, stretched out his hand, and said, "The last time I saw you was during World War II. You were seriously injured by Kyle on the battleship. I arranged for you to be treated and placed in the inquiry room. My name is Natasha Romanoff Carl now." Natasha Romanoff responded unhappily and glanced at Fury coldly. She wasn't too fond of Fury, so how could he dig up her past just after they met? "You two should get to know each other. From now on, you'll be partners in S.H.I.E.L.D." Natasha Romanoff nodded helplessly at Kyle's words, while Fury said happily and satisfiedly, "It's great to have a super agent who I can trust and look after. I can feel more at ease when doing things in S.H.I.E.L.D." After the three of them sat comfortably on the conference sofa, the maid brought the red wine, poured it into each of their glasses, and then left. Kyle elegantly raised the goblet, shook the sweet red wine inside, and asked, "Why, have you been feeling uneasy as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. during this period?" Fury didn't answer. He took a sip of red wine and said solemnly, "Kyle, you were right before. S.H.I.E.L.D. is not that simple. The goal is to eradicate the Hydra organization, but many of the management and personnel are elite talents transferred from various departments of the U.S. government and military. The relationship between the departments has been very complicated since it was first established." "Do you suspect there are Hydra spies in there?" Kyle asked calmly. "I'm not doubting it. I'm sure there is one. And there is one person that I've recently discovered. My new secretary, the one I spend the most time with every day." Fury sighed with regret at this point and said to Kyle apologetically, "I was careless. I have dealt with Hydra so many times before, but I still underestimated their infiltration and lurking abilities." Kyle was not surprised by this. In the original book, S.H.I.E.L.D. was half of Hydra's den of thieves, so the current situation was considered good. He hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Have you eliminated the spy?" "Not yet. After meeting you, I want to find more hidden personnel through that little mouse." Fury said coldly. His one eye was as sharp and majestic as an eagle. and he already had the domineering prototype of the future director of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's easy, Kyle smiled and said. When you go back, tell that little mouse that I'm seriously ill due to the radiation and have lost my functions. I'm staying in this manor to recuperate. In 2 days, I'll move out and live on an unknown island. Are you trying to lure them here? Fury understood Kyle's idea as soon as he heard it. Kyle nodded and said, when one head of the Hydra organization is cut off, another one will grow out. If they dare to come before the day I leave the Earth, none of them will be able to return. Natasha Romanoff raised her hand and interjected, this trap, isn't it a little too obvious? The Hydra people won't fall for it. It doesn't matter whether they come or not. It's just a try. Kyle crossed his legs and leaned back on the sofa, his blue eyes flashing with shrewdness and wisdom. And half of the information Fury revealed to them is true. With half true and half false important information, plus the attraction of killing me as a symbol of peace, I believe there will still be fools who will come to my door. Not only the remnants of Hydra, maybe they will convince other forces to give me a big surprise together. Kyle raised the corners of his mouth, using himself as bait to set the trap, and he actually had a faint sense of expectation. He really hoped that more enemies would come and take their lives as a farewell gift. Natasha Romanoff nodded in agreement. Indeed, if they knew that you had a health problem, even if the credibility was only 1/10, someone in the Red Room would definitely try to send a lot of agents over. Not only the Soviet Red House, but also the German Nazis, Japanese warriors, ninjas. I mean, the hatred value of you in their minds has exceeded the upper limit. Fury laughed in silence. They are welcome to come to the manor for a gathering before I leave. Kyle chuckled, wishing he could hand them the invitations. Who is dissatisfied? Don't hold it in. Don't drag on the grudges of this era until later. Solve them all at once and directly. Oh, there's one more thing I should tell you. Fury looked hesitant. Under Kyle's surprised gaze, he said hesitantly, Peggy Carter. Do you remember? Carter? This name seemed to awaken Kyle's memories. Of course, he did not forget that the first rare green card that marked the turning point in his life was drawn from her. She is a comrade in arms, an old friend, and someone Steve entrusted to his care. Chapter 152 New Elements. What happened to Carter? Is she doing well? Kyle asked. He hadn't seen Carter since Steve disappeared in a plane crash, the last time he was late for the party. It was nearly a year ago. If you ask me about the specifics, I don't know much either. Fury spread his hands and said slowly, I only know that she only stayed at the training base for half a month during the Normandy landings. Later, due to some family reasons, she applied for resignation from General Chester and returned to her residence in New York. She retired earlier than me. Kyle's eyes were complicated. After a moment of silence, he hesitated and asked, Is she married? Natasha Romanoff looked up in surprise. This was the first time she saw the head of the family have personal feelings for a woman other than the Carl family. In fact, Kyle didn't ask this question for himself. Probably not yet, but she's not young anymore, so it's not surprising for her to get married. Fury said, as a matter of course. It's not surprising. Kyle nodded calmly, raised his head, and drank the red wine in the glass in one gulp. Although Carter is an elite American agent, she is just an ordinary person, an outstanding woman with agile skills. Now we don't even know whether Steve is dead or alive. Why should we let him keep waiting until his beauty fades, his body becomes weak, and he endures the torment of loneliness for decades after decades? After all, Carter is not Lucy. Instead of asking her to wait hopelessly, it is better to help her and let her live a happy life. Kyle! Fury interrupted Kyle's thoughts and said in a deep voice, You are about to risk your life to leave the Earth. Are you sure you don't want to go see her? To put it bluntly, this may be the last time you see her. Isn't that why you invited me to meet her? This sentence touched Kyle a little. He put down the cup in his hand, made a decision, and said, Okay, I will go see her before I leave. There was no reason for him to leave without saying goodbye. And now he has enough financial resources and ability to give Carter everything she wants. If Carter insists on waiting for Steve to come back, he can even give her youth and lifespan to survive for centuries. Isn't that right? Fury's fierce and domineering face showed a little smile of success. He reached into the pocket of his black windbreaker nimbly and took out a black and white residential photo between his fingers. Carter still lives with her parents. This is her home address. Pick a time within the next 3 days to go over and say goodbye properly. Have you been planning on me for a long time? Kyle's face was slightly cold, and he looked at Fury with a half smile. This is not. Well, I think it's about time. I should go back to the bureau and implement the trap plan. Fury laughed, put the photo on the table in front of the sofa, and quickly got up and left the sofa, waving to Natasha Romanoff to follow him. This old-fashioned guy. Kyle laughed dumbly, put away the photo, sat on the sofa without moving, and said with his back to the door, "You too. See you again if we are lucky enough." Hearing his words, Fury and Natasha Romanoff, who were about to reach the door, paused. Fury clenched his fists, suppressed his inner emotions, took a deep breath, and responded steadily. "Be careful on the way. And please come back." After saying goodbye to Natasha Romanoff and Fury, Kyle opened the portal and returned to the island base. As soon as he returned to the basement level of the fortress, he saw several young card players rushing forward in panic. "Master, it's bad. The great inventor has gone crazy. Howard is mad? Explain it to me." Kyle was stunned when he heard this. It had only been less than half an hour since he left. So what had happened to Howard? One of the card players reported, "We saw the great inventor in the research room on the second underground floor. He was shaking, looked crazy, and was jumping and rolling and making strange noises." "I understand. You guys go down." Kyle nodded. There was no need for the elevator. He used magic to open the portal to save time. The portal was formed in about 3 seconds. As soon as it was connected to the main research laboratory on the lower floor, Howard's cheerful laughter and the noisy sounds of various instruments were heard from there. Kyle frowned, walked into the research room, and glanced around to confirm. The originally wide, open floor of the main research laboratory was filled with laser emission instruments, acceleration pipes, triangular frames, etc., which were fixed together in a numerous and orderly manner, and the redundant tool parts were scattered on the ground on the side. Howard, dressed in a white protective suit and dirty from head to toe, was sitting in the middle of a pile of acceleration pipes, excitedly knocking on the metal pipes with pliers and laughing. "Howard?" Kyle asked. Howard turned around and cheered. "Kyle, I succeeded. I finally succeeded." "What success? Could it be that?" Kyle opened his eyes wide. As if to confirm his guess, Howard picked up a glass cube storage box. Inside the bottle were small pieces of unknown energy substances, flashing a dazzling blue-white light. Kyle's eyes were attracted by the familiar light. He stepped forward to take the storage box containing the energy material, and the relevant card information came into view. New element crystal block. A new element crystal block that has not yet been named. Blue item card. As an isotope close to the original stone of the universe, it is a highly efficient energy element that can only be produced by using high technology and artificially accelerating particle collisions. This element is very stable, reliable, pollution-free, and contains unimaginable amounts of energy. Even a small piece of elemental energy crystal can supply the steel armor with enough energy to fight for half a day. "Howard, you are really something," Kyle sighed, looking at the brand new element crystal block in his hand that did not exist in this era and was created 50 or 60 years in advance. This is the core energy source of the future Iron Man suit, which can completely defeat the Hydra organization and rely on the infinite energy created by the Tesseract. With so many resources at hand and the support of Wakanda's Ministry of Science and Technology, if I still can't create it, then I will fail your expectations." Howard smiled, looked at the results in Kyle's hands with expectation, and urged, "Kyle, please give this element a name." "I named it." Kyle pointed at his nose. "This is a new element that you designed and created with great effort. All this is thanks to you. The elemental design was figured out from the Tesseract you brought back, and the production resources were also obtained through your collaboration with Wakanda." Howard said without regret. "Then I'll give it a name." Kyle pondered, his eyes full of blue light due to the elemental crystals. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind and said, "Let's call it Phil Moneyed." Chapter 153, The Eve of Departure. New York, Brooklyn, Highland Street, as the hometown symbol of peace. And with the establishment of a branch of Stark Industries after the end of World War II, within a few months, Highland Street had become the most prosperous street with the fastest economic recovery in downtown New York City. Every day, many tourists visit Kyle's hometown outside the wall. Among them, there is a large open space in the street area that has been developed recently. A high-voltage power grid is used as a wall for protection. A skyscraper with a strong sense of technology has been newly built inside. It is rumored that a mysterious department recognized by the state has moved in. Military officers and politicians often come and go there, and their means of transportation are military fighter jets, bulletproof cars, etc. In front of the door of the open space of the skyscraper, on the left is Kyle, the symbol of peace, holding a sword, and on the right is Captain America Steve, holding a shield. Both are 5-meter-tall metal statues, standing upright shoulder to shoulder. This is SHIELD headquarters. At this time, on the 12th floor of the building, in a closed tea room. Looking through the soundproof, bulletproof glass door, you can see that there happen to be 3 people resting inside. A middle-aged senior manager, a secretary in a black suit, and a security guard for the exclusive floor. Some of them were smoking, some were making coffee, and some were chatting on their mobile phones. They were sitting separately, seemingly doing their own things unrelated to each other. And if someone opened the door of the tea room and heard the undisguised discussion among the 3 people inside, they would be so shocked that they would be unable to control themselves. The surveillance of this tea room has been changed. No one will come in during this period. Tell us if you find anything. Of course, there is a discovery, a very important discovery, about Kyle, a symbol of peace. The expressions of the executives and security guards changed slightly. Although they knew it would be bad if they were seen by colleagues passing by, they still found it difficult to calm their inner fear and terror. For them, the man known as the symbol of peace is a taboo among taboos, and his real name is generally not mentioned. The secretary took a deep breath and said solemnly. In the morning, the director went out alone, saying that he was going to visit his comrades. But in fact, he went to a manor to visit that man, and he also brought back the Black Widow who had defected from the Soviet Red House. After he retired, he almost disappeared without a trace. A few months ago, it seems that he just went to the Soviet Red Room and caused a big commotion. Why mention him? After Ivan's death, we have no ability to deal with him. The executives and security guards whispered with slight dissatisfaction. Even if they knew the whereabouts of the symbol of peace, it would be impossible to deal with that godlike, powerful man. The Red Skull and Ivan of the Hydra organization are a lesson for us. One disappeared, and the other was kicked to death on the spot. Maybe there is an ability, the secretary whispered with narrowed eyes. This sentence forced the executives and security guards to look at him subconsciously, not understanding what he meant. The secretary lowered his voice and continued. I also received a piece of important news from the director regarding the health of the symbol of peace. I heard that he did not completely escape the radiation damage from the nuclear bomb and is now bedridden in that manner. What did you say? The security guard looked shocked, but quickly forced himself to calm down. Wait, the executive remained calm and asked in a deep voice. What is the probability that this information is true? Also, have you sent people to monitor and check the manor? Whether it's true or not, the problem is that in less than 3 days, the man will move out of the manor. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The secretary grinned, with madness in his eyes. If we can kill the symbol of peace, maybe we can stir up chaos in the world again. Moreover, judging from the director's various signs, there is a 50% chance that this intelligence is true. The secretary was afraid that the two would back down, so he added another sentence. The security guards and the executives looked at each other. This was undoubtedly a huge gamble, but if they won, the Hydra organization would be able to take revenge successfully. Are we going to gather all the surviving armed forces from around the world? Bet on the future of Hydra. The executives were still frightened, recalling the miserable conditions of the organization's members in the past. That's impossible. Even if we, Hydra, send out some armed personnel, we will already have more than enough. The secretary smiled grimly and suggested, don't forget, given the killings that man carried out during the war, there are many people who want him dead, not just us. That's right. We can pass this information to certain organizations and try to cooperate with them. Kill the symbol of peace. If you can, 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. employees of different identities had a direct conversation and discussed the topic of killing the symbol of peace in the tea room of the newly built S.H.I.E.L.D. building. This might be something even Fury wouldn't dare to think about. But the Hydra spies naturally put their heads into the trap and waited for the moment to close the rope. With the Earth's undercurrent surging, 2 days pass quickly. The time is approaching when Kyle is expected to leave Earth. The day before departure, at the old site of the family estate in the suburbs of New York. It was afternoon, and the sun had not yet set. The golden sunlight was like a thin coat, draped obliquely over the manor building and the surrounding dense woods, and the elongated shadows were colorfully intertwined. Kyle stood in front of the window covered by curtains. In the conference hall behind him, Yutong, wearing a hooded black windbreaker, sat on a chair, shaking her white legs in the air. As she maintained her mind, her eyes flashed silver light slightly. "Boss, there are 2 people hiding in the forest within 100 meters around the manor. The distance is too far to read their thoughts." Yutong's answer was cold and childish. "They should be spies. Ignore them." Kyle shrugged in boredom. "Boss." Logan walked into the room from the corridor and announced, "All the new trainees and servants in the original manor have been secretly transferred out through the portal. There are only 3 of us left here." "Very good. If they really want to attack, they will probably choose to do so at night." Kyle looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was still about 2 hours before nightfall. So he said, "I'm going to go see someone first. You stay in the manor and kill anyone who comes in. No one will be left alive. Okay, if you try to assassinate the boss, I will use Murasame to string their bodies together." Yutong nodded obediently, and the risen sword behind her was unsheathed and slowly floated up, controlling it with her mind to rotate back and forth above her head autonomously. "I wish they could come in sooner." Logan had a grim face as he leaned against the wall beside the door. He gathered strength in his right hand and clenched it into a fist. 3 sharp metal claws stretched out, a bit like 3 blades inserted into the end of his fist. "The 2 top fighting forces of the Carl family are stationed here. Whoever enters this room tonight will know how big the surprise is." Kyle had great trust in Yutong and Logan. He opened the portal, stepped in, and his figure disappeared from the conference hall of the manor across space. Chapter 154, A Kiss, New York, Queens, near the suburbs. As the sun sets, the clouds in the western sky turn a deep red. A gentle breeze blows down over the hillside and concrete road, and the yellow wheat fields on both sides of the road ripple like waves in the sea. Farmers in 2s and 3s were working in the wheat fields, sweating profusely, their faces filled with satisfaction and happiness. Just after the end of World War II, people began to yearn for and cherish a beautiful and comfortable life more and more. The tiny sparks of fire died out in the sunlight, and a silver-haired young man suddenly appeared in the middle of the empty road. The hood covered most of his hair and face, and he was tall and wore a stylish black leather jacket and jeans. Whether it is the perfect appearance or the cool temperament, it easily attracts the attention of farmers. Looking around at the vast wheat fields, the silver-haired young man lowered his head and glanced at the photo of the residential building in his hand with a frown. He did not expect that even the magic spell was ineffective due to the abnormality of his body, and he did not come to the exact place where the photo was. "Young man, how can I help you?" A middle-aged couple walked out from the wheat field next to them with kind faces and asked kindly, "Excuse me, do you know where Peggy Carter lives?" The silver-haired young man asked calmly, holding up the photo in his hand and showing it to the 2 couples who came forward. "Peggy Carter?" The middle-aged couple's expressions changed. They looked at each other, and then looked at the silver-haired young man again with a less gentle and more vigilant look in their eyes. The bearded uncle raised his eyebrows, clenched the agricultural tools in his hands, and said in a slightly stern tone, "Who are you? A former military man? I've told you so many times that Peggy will not be returning to serve. I was in the military, but I retired a long time ago." The silver-haired young man shrugged, not wanting to say too much nonsense or explain, and said simply, "She and I are comrades in arms. I'm about to leave New York, so I came to visit. How about this? The peasant woman hesitated, and the bearded uncle next to her shook his head, put his farm tools on the ground, and refused, saying, "If you have anything to say, just tell us directly, and we will convey it to you." Peggy is recuperating, and it is not convenient for her to see guests. Being decisively rejected, the silver-haired young man did not seem angry. He nodded and asked, "I wonder who you two are?" The middle-aged couple was about to answer when suddenly a pleasant but cold female voice came from not far behind them. "Father, mother, what's wrong?" A woman wearing an elegant lady's hat and a Western-style tight casual suit, holding a basket in her hand, stood upright in a military posture at the corner of the wheat field road. "Ah, Peggy, how come you are here?" the peasant woman exclaimed and trotted towards the woman. With a clang, the bearded uncle dropped the farm tools in his hands and followed the farmer's wife nervously, rushing forward and verbally lecturing her. "I told you not to go out." The two looked concerned, which made Peggy smile slightly. She picked up the basket and said, "I've brought you some food. Just ask your brother to take out the things." The middle-aged couple kept nagging for a while, and as if they remembered the presence of outsiders, they quietly reminded, "By the way, there is a man who claims to be your former comrade in arms who is here to see you." "Comrade?" Peggy was slightly stunned and raised her beautiful eyes. When her gaze fell on the silver-haired young man who was standing coldly 10 meters away, she felt like she was struck by lightning and her delicate body trembled violently. "Carter, long time no see." The silver-haired young man raised his head, revealing his handsome face hidden under the hood with a hint of smile at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, long time no see, Kyle." Peggy couldn't hide her inner emotions and spoke with a trembling tone. "Kale?" The bearded uncle muttered a familiar voice, then suddenly widened his eyes and looked at the silver-haired young man in shock. "Who? Who is he?" Peggy's mother was also shocked. "Peace symbol? This can no longer be described as a big shot. That is a godlike superhero who should only exist in war epics." "Excuse me, could you lend me Carter for a while? I'll just say a few words and then leave." Kyle spoke. His gentle words contained a hint of majesty and unquestionableness. In the vast fields, Kyle and Carter walked side by side on the path covered with flowers and grass, strolling in silence and aimlessly. Kyle's gaze fell on Carter with the corner of his eyes slightly tilted. After not seeing her for a year, the woman seemed to have a fuller figure than before. Her delicate face was not made up much, and her lips were only painted with bright red lipstick. She was still beautiful and cool. Carter chuckled and broke the silence, saying, "Seeing my parents' surprised and admiring expressions just now reminded me of the first time I saw you 2 or 3 years ago. At that time, you were a rookie who was almost kicked out of the training camp. Who would have thought that you would become a legendary role model that the military is proud of and a symbol of world peace? What a coincidence." I also remembered that at that time, you were the sexy agent who observed and studied me and Steve. Kyle blinked and said jokingly, "Who knows? A superhero covered in glory is actually a gangster." Carter spat softly, his cheeks turning pink in embarrassment in the sun as he was lost in memories of the past. "Well, it's all misunderstanding." Kyle wondered to himself. He had been taking the blame for Venom for quite long. "All right." Kyle seemed to remember the scene just now, looked at Carter solemnly, and asked, "Why did you resign? Your parents seem so nervous. Are you sick?" "No, I was just tired of working in the military, so I chose to return home and live a stable life. All family members are like this. They just show their concern for others too exaggeratedly." A ripple flashed across his eyes, and Carter answered expressionlessly, "I'm glad you're okay. Steve asked me to take good care of you before the plane crash. If anything happens to you, I won't be able to leave without peace of mind." Kyle chuckled. This made Carter's face look gloomy. He paused, turned his head quickly, and asked in surprise, "Leave? Where are you going?" "I'm about to leave New York and America and go to a faraway place," Kyle said with a calm face, neither happy nor sad. "When will you be back?" Carter asked after taking a deep breath. "I don't know. I may come back, or I may not." Kyle smiled faintly, looked at Carter, and said in a deep voice, "I have asked Howard to sign the document and transfer $1 million to your personal bank account. You can go to the central bank to formally withdraw it. In addition, after I go back, I will let someone notify Fury and Joseph to intervene, and no one from the military will come to disturb you again. You can live whatever life you want." As he spoke, Kyle raised his right hand, held two life-enhancing cards invisible to others between his fingers, and waved them forward. The cards quickly penetrated into Carter's body and took effect immediately. Two rare blue life-enhancing cards, adding up to a natural lifespan of 60 years. According to the original movie, Carter lived to be over 90 years old, which was more than enough for him to live until the middle of the next century. Why only give the life-enhancing card? This was also a well-considered decision by Kyle. Steve couldn't give Peggy Carter the life she wanted, and it was even more impossible for him to give her that. Whether to continue the long wait or live a stable and happy ordinary life depends on Carter's personal wish. "I understand." Peggy smiled slightly, as sexy and delicate as a blooming rose. She suddenly took a step forward, hugged Kyle, and kissed his cheek near the corner of his mouth. "This is my farewell gift." Kyle only felt a breeze blowing, and his face was slightly wet. Peggy turned around and walked a few steps forward, saying with her back to him, "Go ahead. Take care." Kyle accidentally touched the place where he was kissed just now, nodded, and cast a spell on the spot to open the portal. Looking at Carter's beautiful figure from behind, he suddenly had a strong feeling in his heart that after this separation, he might never see the woman in front of him again. But soon, Kyle put aside the chaotic thoughts in his mind and stepped decisively into the portal. Chapter 155. Night of Revenge. The sun sets, and the dark and cold night descends upon the forest as expected. Only the lights from within the manor overflow, like a faint halo that dispels the darkness. After returning to the manor, Kyle sat on the chair in the owner's office on the second floor. Yutong stood obediently beside him, controlling the red wine bottle with her mind to float above the table and pour the wine down at an angle. The red wine flowed into the goblet without even a drop spilling out. "What's going on outside?" Kyle raised his glass and took a sip of wine, then asked while stroking Yutong's soft black hair. "There are nearly 30 people hiding in the forest within 100 meters of the manor, and there should be more outside 100 meters. Yutong answered softly, squinting her eyes comfortably like a cat. "I guess they can't bear it any longer." Kyle chuckled and placed his fingers on the table, tapping them lightly and rhythmically. Boom, boom, boom. Like the sound of a pendulum counting down, it suddenly stopped. Yutong slightly widened her bright eyes and said in a raised voice, "Here it comes." As soon as the words fell, continuous explosions were heard outside the manor. More than a dozen rocket launchers with loud tails broke through the balcony window and fell into the room. When they were about to explode, they suddenly stopped. Sizzle, the rocket shell that was rushing into the office, still emitting flames and smoke at its tail, suddenly stopped and hovered in the air inside the room, trembling, as if blocked by some mysterious force. "I'll give it back to you." With silver light flashing in her eyes, Yutong waved her little hand, and the shells all turned around and flew back quickly along the trajectory from which they were launched, disappearing into the night outside the manor. Immediately afterwards, the sound of an external bomb exploding was heard, and the curtains were blown up by the blast wave, and the screams of many people were faintly heard. This is like the opening of the war tonight. The assault battle is about to begin. After the joint team outside, who were planning to kill Kyle, realized that they were exposed, the armed personnel rushed out of the forest one after another and swarmed into the main building of the manor. Bang! The first main gate of the manor with low defense was broken by a high explosive grenade, and smoke bombs were thrown in as cover. Dozens of armed men in black combat uniforms, holding swords or guns, broke in forcefully. Kyle remained unmoved when hearing the loud noise coming from downstairs. He leaned back in his chair with a calm expression, raised his wine glass, and sipped the red wine to enjoy the taste. Yudong had no intention of going downstairs. She closed her eyes and focused all her attention on searching and being alert for enemy attacks from the second floor. The second floor is her battle area. As for the first floor, what monster? Kill him now. The sound of grenade explosions, dense and intertwined gunfire, and extremely tragic screams, which had just started and showed no signs of stopping, came from the lobby on the first floor, through the floor and the office door to Kyle's ears. Logan's body was implanted with adamantium not long ago, so it's a good time to sharpen his claws. Kyle shook the wine glass gently with an indifferent expression, like a demon who was used to fighting in life and death. In the tragic atmosphere downstairs that seemed like a killing storm, he was tasting the blood-red wine by himself. At this time, in the lobby on the first floor of the manor, the large and luxurious glass lamps were swaying continuously, blurring the light and shadow in the already smoke-filled room. The remains of more than a dozen dismembered bodies lay messily in a pool of blood. The fatal wounds on the bodies were mostly on the neck and chest, simple and direct, basically killing them with one blow. Along with fierce gunfire and screams, more members of the joint team who broke into the manor died one after another on the red carpet on the floor. What's going on? Did that man take action? Beads of sweat flowed into his eye sockets. The tall white man didn't dare to blink, tightly grasping the assault rifle with a dark metallic luster. As the team leader of the mission to attack Kyle, he is a member of the Hydra organization and the leader of the team that broke through the manor's defense head-on. The target of this temporary enemy attack is the symbol of peace, mainly composed of the remnants of the Hydra organization. Also participating in this secret joint operation are the elite agents of the Soviet Red Room and the samurai and ninjas of the Razang Ninja Organization. The members are all good at attacking and raiding, but now they have just entered the first floor of the manor and were slaughtered unilaterally by a single enemy. Symbol of peace? Is that you? Come out! The team leader growled as he slowly retreated towards the team at the main entrance of the manor. Are you bastards worthy of the master's help? Following a cold snort, a weathered middle-aged man with short hair rushed out from the smoke. His body was moving at high speed, creating a strong wind that dispersed the smoke. He ignored everyone else and kept approaching the team leader. He's out. Shoot him. The squad leader was not surprised but happy. He laughed ferociously and pulled the trigger hard. Fire continued to come out of the muzzle of the rifle. The dozen or so armed men around him reacted very quickly and also aimed at Logan and fired, immediately forming a hail of bullets. With a sneer, Logan showed no intention of retreating. Like a fearless, reckless man, he rushed forward to face the bullets. When he was in the air, 3 sharp, white metal claws extended from the ends of his blood-stained fists. Taking countless bullets with his chest, Logan rushed in front of the team leader, and the hideous smile on the team leader's face turned into surprise. There was a flash of something like a knife, and the sharp claws swung down smoothly, cutting the hot barrel of the rifle and the squad leader's neck neatly, breaking them into 2 halves in a bloody and brutal manner. Logan gritted his teeth and growled like a wild beast. The bullet that had just penetrated his body was quickly squeezed out under the control of his muscles and fell to the ground with a clang. The bullet hole in his body healed before bleeding. Another monster that is not afraid of bullets. Someone gasped and said something, and the eyes of the joint personnel in the lobby on the first floor were filled with despair. On the other side, the office on the second floor of the manor. Yutong opened her eyes with awareness and saw 3 ninjas dressed in black, each carrying a Hikaru sword, rushing in like ghosts from the balcony through the broken glass window. The man who led the ninja team had long, fluttering sleeves, and it was obvious that he had a broken arm. Devil Kyle, I finally get to see you again. The man spoke hoarsely as if a ghost crawling out of hell. He pulled open his mask with one arm and stared at Kyle sitting on the chair with a pair of vicious eyes. Isn't this Hojo Maru? An old acquaintance. Kyle, who had been uninterested, finally raised his head and looked at the one-armed ninja standing in the room. He smiled and said, You are not dead yet, and you come to give me a knife again? Baka! Hojo Maru couldn't help but swear in his own language, feeling so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. In the previous battle at the Hojo gym, he had one arm cut off by Kyle's Murasame, made of sodium carbon steel. The pain was so severe that he had to be burned with fire and injected with nerve-paralyzing poison to stop the bleeding. He then left and went back for treatment. Unexpectedly, he had just walked about 100 meters away when the area where the Hojo gym was located turned into a huge bottomless hole, like a cemetery, evaporating the ninja team and tens of thousands of soldiers. Chapter 156. Bury the enemy. Kyle sat on a chair, with Yutong standing beside him, confronting the three risen ninjas who broke in. There really is something wrong with your body. That's how it should be. Rizang paid such a heavy price. How can you get away with it? Hojo Maru grinned, his facial muscles twisted, looking at Kyle's frail silver hair, and used his remaining left hand to pull out the Rizang sword on his back. Tonight, I will use you as a blood sacrifice for the innocent souls of the thousands of people in Rizang. Have you finished talking nonsense? If you are finished, just start quickly. Kyle yawned in boredom, not intending to take action himself. He reached out and rubbed Yutong's little head beside him and said, "Go, play with them." Yutong nodded slightly, took small steps forward, and stood in front of the three ninjas with their swords drawn. Just relying on her? Are you kidding me? Hojo Maru's mouth twitched, and in his eyes full of hatred and coldness, the fire of anger and humiliation rose again. No matter how you look at it from the outside, the girl in front of you is a harmless and cute girl, short and immature, with no combat ability. I think highly of you by letting Yutong take action. Kyle smiled. It seemed that these ninjas were eager to come for revenge, but they hadn't figured out the situation yet. Let's go together. Hojo Maru stared at Yutong gloomily and said in a cold voice. The other two ninjas looked at each other, nodded quickly, and followed Hojo Maru. The three of them rushed forward with swords in hand, just like they had rehearsed countless times. At the same time, their hands turned into afterimages. After several sounds of breaking wind were heard, darts, flying needles, and other sharp and tiny thrown objects flew at speeds comparable to bullets, forming the first dangerous killing formation. Seeing this scene, Kyle, who was sitting behind Yutong, shook his head as if he had seen the result. She raised her little hand forward, her eyes flashing with cold silver light. Her powerful brain thoughts materialized, surging outward with her body as the center like a translucent energy wave, even rippling the space in the room. In an instant, the space and time in the entire office appeared to have stopped. The flying needles and darts all hovered half a meter in front of Yutong. The three ninjas who were still diving forward felt their bodies slowed down and stuck, and they could not move forward even though they tried their best. What's going on? The hand holding the risen sword trembled, and Hojo Maru held his breath with difficulty, as if there was an invisible wall of air that isolated them outside the wall. Don't get close to the boss again. The silver light in her pupils became brighter, and Yutong pushed her hands outwards, pushing the extraordinary thought that was taking shape. With a buzzing sound, a series of hidden weapons such as flying needles and darts, plus the three sword-wielding ninjas right behind them, were all suddenly bounced back. After rolling more than 10 times in the air, their bodies crashed onto the balcony on the second floor. It's over. Yutong's soft and childish words sounded like the order of the death god at this moment. Under the urging of the invisible will, Murasame, who was beside her, floated in the air and turned into a stream of light under the power of her own. No! Hojo Maru opened his eyes wide, his face twisted and ferocious. He was unwilling to accept this, so he traveled thousands of miles to get here. But in the end, he was lying here and turned into a corpse before Kyle could even make a move. Murasame cut through the air and rushed straight towards the three people on the ground. At the critical moment, Hojo Maru's eyes flashed with a fierce look. He quickly and decisively reached out, grabbed a ninja behind him, and raised him to block in front of him as a shield. Psst! With a cry of surprise, the ninja's face showed despair, and he watched helplessly as Murasame came roaring towards him and easily pierced his chest right in the middle, all the way to the hilt. Damn it! Hojo Maru growled, threw the ninja's body out of the balcony, and roared into the darkness outside. How long are you going to wait? Oh, are there any accomplices? Hearing this, Kyle took a sip of red wine and was not surprised. He looked up and saw several spikes connected to ropes, thrown from outside and wrapped around the remaining stone pillar fence of the balcony. Then 4 female agents in tight black leather jackets grabbed the ropes and pulled them lightly onto the balcony next to Hojo Maru. Super Agent, Red Room, you really haven't learned your lesson. Kyle's face was cold. Last time we saw them, out of their sincerity in offering Black Widow and Infinity Formula, as well as Winter Soldier Bucky's face, they ultimately did not wantonly destroy the Red Room organization's base. Now it is estimated that the Red House has moved the location of its base and has forgotten the pain now that the wound has healed. It's settled from now on the organizational targets for the grassroots card players of the Carl family to practice with will be the Hydra organization and the Red House agent. Coincidentally, the Red House also has the serum of the super agent. Kyle was busy with his own calculations, while at this time, Yutong had already started fighting with 6 enemies in the office. Bullets from guns, darts from hidden weapons, Murasame from cold weapons, as well as the wooden tables and benches in the room. Countless objects formed a chaotic storm, occasionally colliding and exploding or hitting the floor and walls inaccurately. Whether ninja or super agent, their strength is between Black Widow Natasha Romanoff and elite soldiers, which means they are both above ordinary humans. But Yutong faced the 6 people who launched the attack alone. Her face was calm and cold, and the silver light in her eyes showed signs of turning red. "Get out of my way!" Hojo Village roared, and with bruises all over his body, he broke through the defense line of the suspended objects, flew close to Yutong, and swung the Razang sword down quickly and accurately. Yutong raised her eyes coldly, and a table flew over out of thin air, acting as a shield to block the sword attack, but Hojo Village's Hizen sword cut the table into 2 pieces along with it. The blade flashed, and the tip of the blade rushed straight towards her white neck. Seeing that he was about to succeed in killing the opponent, Hojo Village's face showed joy. But the next moment, Yutong quickly and nimbly dodged to the side, and the Razang knife missed and only cut off a few black hairs. While Hojo Mura was still in the air, Yutong grabbed the wrist of his one arm, holding the sword with both hands, spun around on the spot, and slammed Hojo Mura's body to the ground. How is it possible? Hojo Mura's mind went blank, and before he could react, he howled in pain. It was Yutong who snatched the risen knife from his hand and cut a fatal wound on his chest with her backhand, leaving a deep and fatal wound that could be seen to the bone. Blood gushed out like a fountain. "This is Yutong now," Kyle chuckled, feeling relieved and satisfied with the Yutong he had trained. The mind control ability is so powerful that the enemy will intuitively mistakenly believe that Yutong is only good at long-range attacks. But they don't know that she also has the extraordinary physique of a super agent and several fighting skills. Yutong, who has comprehensive abilities without any weaknesses, can completely replace Kyle and become the best candidate with the ability to dominate the Earth in the current era. Hojo Maru fell, and the deadlock on the second floor suddenly became clear. Yutong began to slaughter unilaterally, and the remaining ninjas and agents fled frantically when they saw the bad situation. "Don't let any of them escape." Kyle spoke in a cold voice, drank the red wine in the glass, and looked indifferently at the fleeing enemies. "Since you have come here to say goodbye, then leave your life and body behind and bury them here along with the grievances of this era." Chapter 157, Rainbow Bridge. Goodbye, Earth. A long night passed. The main building of the manor was so damaged that it almost collapsed. The first and second floors were filled with a strong smell of blood and gunpowder. About 100 corpses were piled up in various corners inside and outside the manor. At dawn in the morning, personnel from S.H.I.E.L.D. secretly surrounded the area, recovered the bodies of the post-war corpses in the manor, confirmed their identities one by one, and cleaned and disinfected the area. The newly developed helicopter landed in the courtyard with a humming sound, its propeller blades kicking up countless dust and gravel. Before it came to a complete stop, Fury, a fierce and ferocious man in a black windbreaker and a one-eyed bald head, jumped out of the cabin, followed closely by Natasha Romanoff in a cool black uniform. "Hello, Director." "Hello, Manager." The armed men guarding the gate of the manor with guns, as well as the doctors and nurses performing the autopsy, saw the 2 people coming and immediately put down their work and greeted them with awe. Only a man in a suit dressed as a secretary stood on the steps of the manor, holding the door sill with one hand, looking a little dazed. "Secretary Martin, how is the inspection going inside?" Fury cleared his throat and walked forward to ask in a deep voice. "Ah, Director, you're here." The secretary was startled by the voice and turned around to see that it was Fury. His already pale face turned even paler, and he stammered, Well, so far, 105 bodies have been found. They died in tragic ways. Some of them are Soviet agents and Rizang ninjas. Oh, you missed something. Fury stared at him and said meaningfully. What did you miss? The secretary asked, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. Fury continued. There should be people from Hydra here. You already knew this. Director, stop joking. How could I have known this long ago? The secretary forced out an ugly smile. Fury patted him on the shoulder and said, Okay, stop pretending, Executive Sammy. I have just eliminated some people in S.H.I.E.L.D. You are the only one left, the Hydra spy. Before he could finish his words, the secretary's face turned pale, his legs went limp, and he sat down on the steps of the manor. Natasha Romanoff was very conscientious. Without Fury's prompting, she walked over and locked the other person with spare handcuffs. The armed personnel next to her helped escort her to the helicopter. I think you should leave today, Fury said with inexplicable emotion while stopping in front of the door. It's about time. Natasha Romanoff nodded and stood side by side with Fury on the steps, quietly looking at the manor in front of them. People in this world may not realize one thing yet. Fury shook his head inexplicably and said with a sad tone, Today, February 11th, 1945, a god who belongs only to humans has passed away. At this time, in the heart of the Atlantic Ocean, a holographic projection disguised itself as a dragon turtle island covered in floating ice. On the top rooftop of the fortress building, Kyle stood alone in the center, with Lucy, Yutong, Logan, and Howard next to him. For Kyle, there was no need for too many people to see him off. The 4 people in front of him were more than enough. Kyle, boss, boss, boss. The 4 people all had different names, but their faces all looked heavy and sad, with their fists clenched tightly to cover up the grief and sadness of parting. No need to say farewell words. The house will be left to you to take care of. With a casual smile, Kyle took a deep breath and walked forward a few steps. With a slight movement of his mind, Kyle pulled out the cards one by one and summoned them into entities. First it was Venom, and he immediately transformed into an integrated night battle suit that became symbiotic with it. Then he put on pendant rings on the 2 fingers of his left hand, installed vibranium arm guard on his right hand, and placed a pair of energy pistols on both sides of his calves. Finally, a one-handed sodium carbon steel sword with a leather scabbard was carried on the back. Now, I'm fully armed. Kyle exhaled lightly, and under the gaze of Lucy and the other 3, his mind entered the card space, and he pulled out the card that had always been stored at the highest place. The card turned into a real card, and Kyle held it between the 2 fingers of his right hand. The card was crystal clear and glowed with a dazzling crystal luster. Space gemstone. In the old days of the current Earth, if you want to cross the boundless starry sky and go to other planets on the other side of the universe, you can only try to control it and rely on it. Kyle, is that the thing that can take you away from the Earth? Howard stared at the crystal card and asked on behalf of the other core members of the Carl family. Kyle nodded and explained, Since the beginning of the world, the universe was formed in a Big Bang. The debris of the system that became the universe condensed into a hard block, among which 6 mutants with infinite power appeared. They are the Infinity Stones. And what I have in my hand is exactly one of those space stones. Only extraordinary individuals in the universe can control and use it. After saying that, Kyle stared at the crystal card in his hand. He was not sure whether he could be considered an extraordinary individual life, and whether he could withstand the surging power of the raw stone. But he had no choice. If he wanted to quickly cross the star field, he could only try to master the space soar. Since the decision had already been made, Kyle no longer hesitated and immediately transformed the cards in his hand into real objects. Under the astonished gazes of Lucy and the others, a small blue gem appeared on the palm of Kyle's right hand wrapped in the vibranium arm guard, emitting a dazzling blue light and mysterious and strange magic. At this time, in the hall of a residence in Kamartaj, a hemisphere away, Master Ancient One sat on a mat, explaining with a gentle face, while dozens of monks in long robes sat on the smooth floor below, closing their eyes, listening patiently, immersed in the mysteries of magic. As if sensing something, Master Ancient One suddenly stood up. As the monks were puzzled, She looked towards the west with a solemn gaze. At this moment, her eyes seemed to pass through the wall, across the ocean and the land, and fell on a blue gem. On the island base, the dazzling blue light of the gemstone almost formed a pillar of light, which was about to cover Kyle. No matter what happens, don't come near me. Rain eyes Logan. Keep an eye on Lucy. After saying this, Kyle put his whole heart and soul into the space stone. He raised his left hand decisively and pressed it on the gem in his right palm without hesitation. Space raw stones react sensitively to organic carbon. In just a moment, strands of spatial power penetrated into Kyle's left hand. Venom's body could not bear it and slipped to his left shoulder, completely exposing his arm. With his palms together, Kyle touched the gem with one hand and tightly grasped the space stone that continuously emitted light beams with both hands. Violent energy poured into his left palm. Kyle clenched his teeth, trying to hold back the pain of half his body, about to be torn apart and collapsed. His left arm and left half of his face were translucent, and the blood vessels inside could be clearly seen. The deep blue energy of the space gem was constantly penetrating and infecting him, and the long-suppressed self-healing factor was struggling to fight back. Externally, the energy tides and light beams emitted by the space stone have covered Kyle's entire body, forming a vortex of light columns that rush straight up to the sky and the Milky Way. Ah! Kyle couldn't help but roar. The feeling of his muscles festering, his skeleton being crushed, his blood evaporating, his genes being destroyed, and his body completely falling apart was far greater than any pain he had ever felt before. Despite this, he still held the space stone tightly, unwilling to let go. Kyle, with tears streaming down her face, Lucy couldn't help but rush towards the energy beam, but was quickly stopped by Logan and Yutong, both of whom had heavy faces. Above the island, the pillar of light that shot up into the sky gradually reflected the sky, and a brilliant starry sky image finally took shape in the air. The next moment, a beam of rainbow bridge light descended and washed over Kyle's body. His body was like white mist under the sun, slowly dissipating into thin air until it ceased to exist. Written request for leave, take a day off. I'm preparing to write a chapter about the universe. Today I reviewed some related movies, including Thor 1.2.3, Guardians of the Galaxy 1.2, and Avengers 3. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the chapter section. Chapter 158. The other side of the starry sky, a brilliant rainbow beam of light started from the Earth and instantly passed through countless different planets and star regions. All scenes and objects were rapidly moving backwards at a speed faster than the speed of light. Kyle's human figure could be vaguely seen in the rainbow light. He had lost consciousness, but his left hand was still tightly holding the space stone. Kyle's entire body was corroded by the violent energy of the gem. The blue light seemed to flow through his blood, and he could clearly see his internal organs and veins through his skin. Rolling, the venom that was symbiotically attached to Kyle's body made some sharp and strange screams, and it was difficult to maintain the illusory form of the knight's suit and return to its original form that was similar to a ball of black liquid. The black liquid slowly retreated from Kyle's left arm to his shoulder, and then from his shoulder to the right half of his body, as if it could not withstand the burning annihilation brought by the gem's energy, and finally completely broke away from the symbiosis and became independent. When it left the body, Venom also attached the vibranium arm guards, sodium carbon steel sword, energy pistol, and suspension ring that were originally worn on Kyle to the outside of the body with liquid black silk adsorbent. It looks like a tortoise shell made of several pieces of equipment, with its body curled up inside and falling into a deep sleep. The space gem flickered for a moment, then dimmed completely and disappeared into the palm of the unconscious Kyle's left hand. The blue light of the gem's energy also disappeared into the body. The rainbow bridge leaves the solar system, crosses the Milky Way, and finally reaches the other side, where it has lost its luster. Kyle and Venom paused in the dark starry sky, and then fell into the vortex black hole in front of them one after another. At this time, on a certain planet, there is a desolate and abandoned, unowned area. The rotting corpses of various creatures, broken garbage, etc. from different planets and worlds are piled up into garbage mountains and flow into garbage rivers. The mountains and fields are covered with garbage. A team of 5 humanoid creatures, wearing dirty protective cloaks, ugly masks, holding sacks and laser guns in their hands, they search carefully like scavengers and recycle the valuable alien garbage they find. Suddenly, the 5 scavengers raise their heads and look directly above their heads. Then they knelt on the ground excitedly, raising their hands in joy. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and there were already several small, colorful wormholes scattered around. At this time, one of the small wormholes expanded rapidly, forming a red wormhole vortex with a radius of 100 meters. As the storm roared and spun, the wormhole vortex gap began to continuously throw out various types of garbage of different file sizes, like a huge garbage rain. For scavengers, fresh garbage that has not been searched before is naturally like a gift from God. Bang! There was half a damaged fighter plane in it, and the fallen garbage piled up into a new garbage mountain. 5 scavengers nearby danced with joy, ignoring the rain of garbage that was still falling, and rushed in, searching left and right. I thought the competition in the suburbs wouldn't be that great, but they got there first. There must be good stuff in this large amount of fresh garbage. Less than 30 meters away from the new garbage mountain, a small figure hid behind a plastic bucket. With a pair of green eyes, he stared at the scavengers who had taken the lead. He sighed and muttered, 5 of them, all armed with guns. They are too difficult to deal with. Forget it. Xiaoying shrank back and prepared to leave. Her steps suddenly stopped. It was the new garbage mountain that she had been paying attention to. It seemed that something unexpected had happened. On the newly formed garbage mountain, 5 scavengers climbed on it, digging through the garbage and turning it over, looking for valuable garbage items. One of the scavengers put down his weapon, lifted a piece of broken steel deck with both hands, squatted down, and got closer. Tried to get a clear look at the items under the garbage mountain. Suddenly, a lot of garbage flew away and exploded. The scavenger was horrified and wanted to retreat, but from the bottom of the garbage mountain, a bare hand stretched out like lightning, and its 5 fingers clasped his neck like iron clamps. There are living creatures. The other 4 scavengers were shocked and were on high alert with guns in hand. Woo-woo. The scavenger's neck was strangled, and his panicked limbs struggled violently. The garbage in the garbage mountain rolled down, and the owner of the hand slowly revealed his true face. Silver hair that fell to his shoulders, bright blue eyes, bronze skin, and a tall, perfect human young man's body wearing only a pair of boxer briefs. The muscles in his left hand bulged like steel, and with brute force alone, he lifted the scavenger in his hand off the ground with his feet. What kind of creature are you? Hurry and put our people down. For scavengers approached with guns and issued warnings, all speaking the universal language of the galaxy. This was certain because the previous sacrifice card draw had already gained proficiency in the Galactic Alliance language. Listening to the unfamiliar words, the silver-haired young man who had just woken up looked dazed, as if he still had the time difference from crossing the star field. He shook his head without understanding the situation. After taking a few deep breaths, the confusion in his eyes disappeared completely. I really succeeded, Kyle muttered to himself, and with a loose movement of his 5 fingers, the dying scavenger rolled down and fell on the garbage mountain. After taking off the mask, the male scavenger gasped for breath after surviving the disaster. His face still had the facial features, but his skin was pale, rough, and weird, which was inconsistent with the humans on Earth. This made Kyle even more certain that what he saw before him were undoubtedly alien species, and this was no longer the original Earth. Are you a warrior? The other 4 scavengers did not clear the range, but became even more hostile, pointing their guns at Kyle and moving closer to the garbage mountain. It seemed that no one on Earth had dared to point a gun at him like this for a long time. Warrior? So what? Kyle's tone turned cold, and he subconsciously clenched his fists. He was slightly stunned and realized that he did not have a symbiotic relationship with Venom. Where is Venom? Also, the weapons and equipment on his body seemed to be gone. As for the warriors, we don't need to treat them as food. We can sell them for a good price in the duel arena. The scavenger who took off his mask stared at Kyle viciously and issued an order to the other 4 people with guns. Capture them alive. Hearing this, Kyle's expression turned completely cold, and as he looked at the 4 scavengers approaching him, an icy cold light flashed in his eyes. I had originally planned to give in and inquire about the information about this place, but now it seems that there is no need for that at all. It turns out that no matter where you are, there is only one law in the Marvel Universe: the strong prey on the weak. Kyle suddenly smiled. When the scavengers were puzzled by this, Kyle took another step back, and the garbage mountain on the spot collapsed under the pressure. He was like a cannonball that suddenly flew forward. Chapter 159. Planet Sokka Call Out. In the field of vision, it turned into a blurry afterimage passing by, and in the blink of an eye, Kyle swooped down from the top of the garbage mountain. The explosive speed of 10 times that of humans was too terrifying. The leading scavenger opened his mouth wide, without a gun in his hand, and uttered 3 words in a trembling voice: "Shoot." Just as the words fell, several beams of white laser light brushed past the figure's edge, then missed and hit the garbage mountain, exploding. Kyle approached and punched with all his strength without holding back. The 2 scavengers standing in the front howled miserably under the tons of heavy punches and were unable to let go of the guns in their hands, and their bodies flew backwards uncontrollably. There were clear fist marks on their chests, and even their muscles and ribs were clearly collapsed. They rolled like a ball and flew 10 meters away. It looks like a human, and its vitality does not seem to be much higher than that of ordinary humans. Half of its body is buried in another garbage mountain, motionless and becoming new garbage. Kyle turned his palms over with an indifferent expression and accurately caught the 2 black gold guns of the scavengers he had killed, and quickly aimed the muzzles of his guns at the other 2 scavengers with guns. "Kill them quickly." The 2 scavengers shouted and raised their guns to fight back, but their words of attack soon turned into screams. Their bodies were pierced by lasers, forming round, bloody holes in their lower abdomen or chest, and they fell straight to the ground lifeless. I hate being pointed at with a gun the most. Shrugging his shoulders, Kyle turned sideways, looked at the surviving scavenger leader with indifference and coldness, and slowly walked towards him. The scavenger leader sat blankly on the garbage-strewn floor. The scene turned around so quickly that in less than 3 seconds, his 4 companions were reduced to corpses. Tap tap. Wearing only shorts and combat boots, Kyle, who was naked and dressed strangely, stopped in front of the scavengers. The scavenger leader knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. He kissed his dirty boots and said tremblingly, "Don't kill me. I am very familiar with this place and can be of great use to you." "What use are you to? Tell me," Kyle asked coldly. With Venom away, he really needs a local to understand the situation here. "I can," said the scavenger leader, and he suddenly swung his left hand hidden under his body. A small technological device, like a hidden weapon, suddenly attacked Kyle, who was nearby. As if he had been prepared, Kyle's eyes flickered. His body was still in combat alert. His 5 senses and reflexes were extremely sharp. Facing this seemingly unavoidable close-range attack, he just gently tilted his body and cleverly avoided the small technological device. The technological device crashed onto the abandoned steel deck behind him and immediately absorbed slightly on the surface, as if injecting some kind of liquid into it. How is it possible to avoid it? The scavenger leader was dumbfounded upon seeing this. His pale and ugly face looked like he wanted to cry, but had no tears. When it comes to using hidden weapons, you're not as good as those ninjas in Razang. Kyle shook his head. If he met someone more cautious, he would probably get hit. Unfortunately, he is a war hero who fought his way out of the cruel battlefields of World War II on Earth. This little trick is far from enough to trick him. However, after this resistance, Kyle also lost his temper. He raised his foot and stepped directly on the head of the scavenger leader, ignoring the other party's wailing and pleas for mercy, and stepped half of his face into the ground. "You can't kill me. If you kill me, you an alien, you won't survive today here," the scavenger leader said, gritting his teeth, his mouth half buried in the ground, hesitating and choking on the garbage and dust. "Boy, I will tolerate you for now, and then I will sell you to the duel arena to help me count the money," he thought resentfully. Believing that he had the leverage in hand, and the other party would not kill him easily. Unfortunately, he guessed wrong about Kyle again. I've already given you 2 chances. There's a saying in my hometown that things never happen more than 3 times. But with me, there's never a 3rd chance. With a cold smile, Kyle eased the force of his foot and pressed it down inch by inch. The scavenger leader's head was about to be crushed, and he had a splitting headache. He finally began to panic and realized that he had met a tough guy. "Give me one more time." Baji. After the crisp sound of something breaking, the giant vortex wormhole above Kyle's head shrank back to its original size. The garbage rain stopped, and the noise in the area subsided. Did I come here by encountering a space wormhole on the way? Then where is the venom? Why didn't it follow? Looking at the pile of garbage he had come out of, Kyle fell into deep thought. He put his feet on the cotton coat cloak of the scavenger leader's corpse, rubbing them back and forth to wipe off the sticky blood on the soles of his shoes. Kyle looked down and saw 3 ownerless item cards floating above the corpse of the scavenger leader. High-voltage laser firearms. High-tech thermal weapons that can fire single laser beams, which can cause penetrating and burning damage to targets. Blue item card. Neurotoxin remote control machine. A high-tech auxiliary tool that forms a control device with a small god-level toxin-emitting probe. It can remotely control the probe to inject toxins and paralyze the target. Blue item card. Scavenger ID card. The identity card of the scavenger profession, number 266. White item card. Even scavengers and beggars are recognized professions on this planet. Are you serious? With a slight twitch in the corner of his mouth, Kyle drew the card and looked around carefully for the first time. He then began to understand the origin of this profession. As soon as he looked around, he saw endless alien garbage within his sight.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.